bit of blue sky. And where we do see some sunshine, temperatures 15, 16 degrees, even where it's rather glum in the east, 12 or 13. So it is pretty mild. It's a very similar story on Thursday. Again, most places dry. A bit more wind. The wind's actually picking up tomorrow in the west and staying pretty breezy around western coasts on Thursday. Again, northern Scotland just poking out there with some sunshine, seeing temperatures into the mid or even high teens. Elsewhere, most places just dry and cloudy with temperatures 11 to 13 degrees.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day.
We're giving luck.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Court cases,
a presidential dropout,
assassination attempts.
This has been a US election like no other.
And if the polls are correct, it's on a knife edge.
Stay up with us as the drama unfolds and America decides their next president.
We'll discuss what it means for them, for the world, and for our special relationship. America Decides, tonight from 11.
Only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you on this massive day in politics. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. As millions of Americans head to the polls for the greatest political showdown on earth, can Donald Trump pull off the political comeback of the century and be voted in as the 47th president of the United States? Or will Democrat Kamala Harris nudge it? We'll be live from the land of the free, covering the greatest political spectacle on the planet. And yesterday, Sir Keir Starmer announced he wanted to reset Britain's relationship with Interpol to help smash the gangs. Well, I'll be joined by the big Brexit beast, Ben Habib, who thinks the Prime Minister may be deliberately walking into a carefully laid trap to snag us into closer ties with the cursed European Union. Yesterday, the president of the National Farmers Union, Tom Bradshaw, had a crunch meeting with the Environment Minister to relay the fury of British farmers after Labour's inheritance tax heist. Are we heading for Farmageddon? Farmer strikes, mass protests and even food shortages? Well, Tom will join me to give GB News viewers the lie of the land. Isn't this the story of the year? 2 Italian restaurants in Bibington near Sheffield have gone above and beyond the call of duty this remembrance. They're giving away free meals to all armed services veterans all week. They deserve a medal for their patriotic service to the country. I'll be joined by that wonderful father and son team from Sette Colli and Paolo's, who, in my opinion, deserve a medal for the patriotic generosity. What a magnificent show. That's all to come. Welcome to the show. History will be made later on tonight, possibly over the next few days, whichever way you like it. Can anybody stop the Trump train? Will Kamala Harris nudge it? All eyes on America. Meanwhile, back here in Blighty, are we being stitched up by Brussels once again on the hush? Ben Habib thinks so. He'll be here to spill the beans in a minute. And as I said, that crucial crunch meeting with the Farmers Union and the government. What was said in it? Stand by. We've got the full inside skinny. We were a fly on the wall in that meeting. Are we heading for Farmageddon? Our farmers are taking it in the neck. Is it time for them to take a stand? Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. But before that, here's your headlines, and it's Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. Good afternoon. It's just gone 3 o'clock. These are your headlines from the GB newsroom. The Queen is unwell with a chest infection and has had to withdraw from her engagements this week. Buckingham Palace released a statement saying Her Majesty the Queen is currently unwell with a chest infection, for which her doctors have advised a short period of rest. With great regret, Her Majesty has therefore had to withdraw from her engagements this week, but she very much hopes to be recovered in time to attend this weekend's remembrance events as normal. She apologises to all those who may be inconvenienced or disappointed as a result. Sir Keir Starmer has just posted on X saying, on behalf of the whole country, I wish Her Majesty the Queen a steady recovery. The Duchess of Gloucester has stepped in on the Queen's behalf to attend the annual opening of the Field of Remembrance at Westminster Abbey on Thursday. We'll bring you more on that as we have it. Americans are heading to the polls across the country today to decide their 47th president in what is being described as a historically close race. As well as choosing who will be the next president of the White House, Americans will also be electing 435 members of the House of Representatives, 34 Senate seats and 11 state governors. Polling stations have now opened in several states, and the first result has come in from the small town of Dixville Notch in New Hampshire, where Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have tied with 3 votes each. Well, both Harris and Trump spent their final day campaigning in swing states like Pennsylvania and Michigan. Here's what Kamala Harris had to say in Pennsylvania.
We will win. And we will win. We will win. And we will win because when you know what you stand for, you know what to fight for.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump spoke to his supporters in Michigan.
But I think we're in very good shape. We just have to show up and you're going to have the biggest victory. You know what this will be? The single greatest victory, politically speaking, in the history of our country.
Back at home, Kemi Badenoch has held her first shadow cabinet meeting today, saying she'll win back the trust of the public with a team effort as she released her full shadow cabinet this morning. Chris Philp has been announced as Shadow Home Secretary, while Jessie Norman has been appointed Shadow Leader of the House. Notably, there is no role for Tom Tugendhat, who was a contender in the leadership race. Yesterday, Badenoch's former rival, Robert Jenrick, accepted the role of Shadow Justice Secretary, while the former Work and Pension Secretary, Mel Stride, is a new Shadow Chancellor. And former Home Secretary, Priti Patel, has been appointed Shadow Foreign Secretary. The new co-chair of the Conservative Party, Nigel Huddleston, spoke to Eamon and Isabel earlier today.
It was very clear that she wanted to offer roles to all of her opponents because she has a great degree of respect for them. All of those who wish to serve and all of the names you mentioned, they are talents in the party, and one of the key things Kemi wants to do is unite the party and make sure that we draw in all the talents in terms of those serving in the shadow team.
And the tobacco and vapes bill will be introduced in Parliament today. And Health Secretary Wes Streeting told GB News this morning that the government won't proceed with banning smoking in some outdoor hospitality venues for now. Labour wants to take tougher action to better protect the public, NHS and the economy from the harms of smoking. A ban may be imposed in playgrounds and outside schools. Wes Streeting told Eamon and Isabel there needs to be a balance between benefiting public health and any negatives on people's liberties or on people's livelihoods.
There's no doubt that the hospitality sector has really been through the mill in recent years. The impact of the pandemic, the challenges in the wider economy, the amount of money we've got spare in our pockets. And look, one of the there aren't many advantages to leaks of government discussions, but one of the advantages of this leak was that it's meant we've been able to have a discussion with the hospitality sector. And based on the evidence on the upside risks and the arguments on the downside risks, we've chosen not to proceed with the outdoor hospitality proposal at this time.
Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Martin.
Thank you, Sophia. I don't know about you, but I cannot barely contain my excitement because Americans head to the polls today to decide whether Kamala Harris or Donald Trump will be the next 47th president of the United States. It's one of the tightest presidential races in political history, as both candidates are tied neck and neck in the 7 key battleground states that are likely to be vital to swinging this election. Well, joining me now is the host of the Politics podcast. I like the sound of that. Justin Young. I believe Justin is joining us there from Austin, Texas. Thank you for joining us, Justin. So the markets have just opened. The Nasdaq, they've gone Trump-tastic. The money seems to be backing Donald Trump. It's looking favourable. There was a big poll of polls, I believe, came out late in the night UK time. That has Donald Trump leading in all 7 key swing states. But anyway, you're that side of the pond. What's the latest?
Indeed. And I have already done my civic duty and voted here in Austin, Texas this morning. The mood right now is tight. There's no other way to describe it. There are, as you mentioned, 7 swing states, and here's the lay of the land. Right now, Republicans have done something that they've very rarely done, and that's early vote. They are leading in the Sun Belt states, so Nevada, where Las Vegas is, Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina. Those are all states that right now Republicans have early vote leads on. That normally does not happen. In Pennsylvania, where Kamala Harris spent her entire closing day yesterday, they have done better than they did before. But really, the big story isn't that Republicans voted more in early voting. It's that Democrats voted less. In 2020, Democrats had a 1 million vote advantage in early vote in Pennsylvania. As we speak today and Pennsylvanians go to the polls, gadzooks, it is only 400,000.
And what does that tell us? I mean, we've seen last time around, Justin, Donald Trump very suspicious of early voting, of the postal system, and he sent his people to vote out on the day. That didn't quite work out. There's been a radical change of tactics. Are you saying it's looking like it may have paid off?
Well, right now you've seen enough early voting from Republicans that they have kept themselves in the race, if not led it, in, as I said, in places where you haven't normally happened. Yeah, in 2020, it was a gigantic disservice that Donald Trump did himself. Obviously, COVID was raging. There were a lot of decisions made by state houses, and we can leave it to legal and political scholars to say whether or not it was done on the up and up, to change mail balloting rules. That is still something that's very controversial, but that's where Donald Trump got very upset. What I would say, and I think even other Republican commentators have said, that there was a lot of complaining after the fact when he should have done stuff before the voting started. That has not been the case this year. Not only has the Republican National Committee been very active legally to try to challenge things that they believe should be altered, but there might be an enthusiasm gap here. That's the story that I'm watching the most, is that the Kamala Harris campaign has talked a lot about how the difference in this election is going to be their ground game. The fact that they have more people out there in the field telling people to go vote for her. My simple question is, if they do, then why did they get outvoted in the Sun Belt? Why is the Pennsylvania early vote not what it should be? If you put $1 billion into a ground game, usually the point is you get more votes as opposed to less.
Isn't it interesting as well, Justin, some things always remain the same. The Democrats have spent a great deal of this campaign comparing Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler, calling him a Nazi, and as if on cue, they wheel out Oprah, Julia Roberts, Beyonce, Lady Gaga, Christine Aguilera. Does that not paint a picture that the Democrats have become a party of millionaires, of the liberal metropolitan elite?
become, yeah. I mean, I think that they have certainly been the more glitzy party for a very, very long time. And part of what you're also watching in this election is if there is going to be a realignment, a real coalitional realignment. For a very long time, the Democrats have cobbled together. If you look at what the Obama coalition was, it was not only a lot of black votes in the city, but also blue collar voters and collegiate degree earners. That seems to be tilting more and more toward the managerial class, toward people who live in cities, and possibly at the expense of some of those blue-collar workers and some of those Latino and black voters that they have very much counted on. And that's before we get into any of the edge cases that might tell the tale in some of these swing states, including the Jewish vote and the Muslim vote, because both the Biden administration and the Harris campaign have both tried to build a house on both sides of the river when it comes to the Mideast conflict, and it doesn't appear that they have pleased anyone.
OK, Justin, you got some hours ahead of you. Excitable, no doubt. Giant sacks, industrial-sized vats of popcorn and coffee on demand. Justin Young, I'm going to ask you for a prediction because that's the kind of guy I am. If you had to make a call on this, who do you think is going to be the 47th president of the United States?
I made my selection on the podcast, the Politics Show, which I encourage everybody to go download. I explained it in fuller there, but I do believe that Donald Trump will be the 47th as well as the 45th president of the United States. I believe that the Republicans will take the Senate, but I believe the Democrats will take the House.
Excellent stuff. I'll be sure to check that out. The Politics podcast sounds right up my strauser. Justin Young, magnificent start to the show. Thank you very much and enjoy the greatest show on earth. And we'll have full coverage of the US election tonight right here on GB News with Stephen Dixon and Eddie Costello, as well as Tom Harwood, bringing you all of the latest in America Decides, Trump v. Harris. Don't miss it. That kicks off from 2 a.m. right the way through until breakfast. Make sure to tune in. Now back to this side of the pond for a little bit of politics, and the new Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch, has gathered her shadow cabinet for the first time this morning, as you can see on your screens, as she confirmed the process of renewing the party had well and truly begun. Now, the big jobs went to some familiar faces: Dame Priti Patel as Shadow Foreign Secretary, Mel Stride as Shadow Chancellor, and it was confirmed late this morning that the former Home Office Minister, Chris Philp, that's him on your screen right now, will serve as the new Shadow Home Secretary. But there was no job for the leadership candidate Tom Tugendhat, but it remains unclear whether he had ruled himself out. Well, to discuss this now, I'm joined in the studio by GB News' political editor, Chris Hope. Chris, welcome to the show. Am I being uncharitable to say that a lot of people's first reaction to this list will be, who? I mean, Priti Patel is a big name, a bit of red meat for the Conservative side of the wing. But are we looking at a talent pool that's not as big as perhaps it could be?
Well, you're setting up my line, aren't you, Martin? Because I did say earlier on GB News it's very much the shallow cabinet, not the shadow cabinet, because the big beasts who may have bulked it out with experience are not part of it, by and large. James Cleverly, Jeremy Hunt, Sir Oliver Dowden, Steve Barclay and others too are not part of this. They've asked not to be part of this new team. Yes, Mel Stride's there as the Shadow Chancellor. Mel Stride, of course, when people were polled about who Mel Stride was in the summer, when he ran for leadership, voters came back saying, who is she? So Mel Stride wasn't that well known as being a male MP, even at that point. But Priti Patel, she's a big beast, shadow Foreign Secretary. James Cartledge in defence, Chris Philp, Shadow Home, Kevin Hollerake, Housing, taking on Angela Rayner, Vicky Atkins, Environment, Andrew Griffiths, Business, Claire Coutinho, Net Zero. By my count, there were 25 slots in Shadow Cabinet. Yeah. Around 20 of them have gone to former supporters or supporters of Kemi Badenoch. So I do wonder how much this is uniting the party. Robert Jenrick's there, of course, as Shadow Justice Secretary. His two supporters, Vicky Atkins and Ed Arger, are the only two who we know who backed him. And Priti Patel, Mel Stride, we don't think backed either of the two who in the final two. So I think it's complicated. Tom Tugendhat, I got wind last night, was not going to be part of this new lineup. I couldn't get it confirmed from him, so didn't report it probably correctly. what he does next, I'm not sure. He is seen as a moderate Tory MP. The Tory Reform group of Tory MPs didn't back any of the two candidates. Is he going to sit it out, see if it goes a bit wobbly for Kemi, and then strike and become this kind of prince over the water figure for the moderate Tories? Could be the case. Kemi Badenoch, though, she addressed her cabinet this morning, her shadow cabinet this morning when it met. She said then that my team draws on talents from across our party based on meritocracy with a breadth of experience and perspective. She added, we'll now get to work holding Labour to account and rebuilding our party based on conservative principles and values, notably not policies, because this candidate, this new leader of the party, is someone who has got principles, you know what she believes in, but no actual red meat policies.
Talking about red meat, Robert Jenrick, has he been defanged by being made the Shadow Justice Secretary? A lot of people, he'd have wanted Home Secretary. He'd have wanted to be on the immigration tickle, ECHR. Of course, Kemi didn't agree with any of that. Has he been sidelined? He's included, but he hasn't really got a lot to get his teeth into.
You mentioned ECHR, that's European Court of Human Rights. I mean, ECHR will fall under the justice brief. So I think he has been given the role of reviewing ECHR, which is quite interesting, I think. Whether he chooses to what to do with that. I mean, I think for me, Kemi Badenoch has looked at this complicated, vexed issue, said, well, you fought your campaign on ECHR withdrawal. You persuade your colleagues in the party to back it, because I'm not sure about that at all. So I think it may be a poisoned chalice to go down almost like a rabbit hole on the issue of withdrawal.
And in that very seat yesterday, we had Zia Yousafzai from the Reform Party. He was licking his lips about the fact Kemi Badenoch got into the leadership role. In fact, he told us they've had a bumper weekend, the record weekend. So it seems to be, by the reading the runes there, that maybe a lot of Conservatives were hoping that Robert Jenrick got in. He became a bit of a Nigel Farage tribute act in many senses, didn't he? He was wearing the ECHR colours, tough on immigration, making all the right noises. That didn't come to pass. And so perhaps a lot of true blues thinking, I don't know if I want to stick with the Tories, and they may be moving on.
Well, I think Kemi Badenoch is someone who can unite the party more than Robert Jenrick, because Robert Jenrick laid out his policy so clearly on getting rid of the Equalities Act, Human Rights Act, ditching an ECHR, that would have been divisive for so many members of this of MPs in the party. I think it's quite a good idea to go after principles and try and agree around a principle collegially. I just had a text while I'm on air from a source close to Kemi Badenoch. I did ask, will we get a briefing on what it said in the Shadow Cabinet? I'm told here that the principle is that what it says in the Shadow Cabinet stays private. So the new way of her doing business is not briefing from the Shadow Cabinet. Perhaps the leaks of the past will be ending with Kemi Badenoch.
Maybe leave all the leaks to the Labour Party. Chris Hope, thank you very much. Now stick around, because I'm joined now by the former editor of the Sunday Mirror and the political commentator, Paul Connew. Paul, welcome to the show. What do you make of the new Shadow Cabinet? Anything in there to send shivers down the spines of the Labour Party?
Well, I'm looking forward, although it'll be overshadowed by what's happening across the Atlantic, I'm looking forward to the first PMQs tomorrow in Badenoch versus Keir Starmer. It'll be fascinating, probably, as I say, eclipsed a little media-wise by what's happening in the States. It's an interesting shadow cabinet. There were a couple of surprises for me. I mean, Mel Stride, I always thought was going to get his wish with the Chancellor role. Chris Philp's a surprise. I mean, he's only been a junior minister for 2 years in the Home Office, and here he is as Home Secretary. And certainly, I think Robert Jenrick. I think he and some of his supporters were disappointed that he hasn't got one of the three big roles. But as Chris Hope was just saying, you know, he does have justice, and that does come into the ECHR issue. But it's an interesting shadow cabinet. Priti Patel, I was surprised by too. I thought she'd get a cabinet role, but foreign secretary, interesting. Particularly at a time when we could possibly be dealing with I hope not, but a Trump government in next year.
Well, that was going to be my precise next question. There could be a few awkward telephone calls if the Trump does get in. David Lammy is compared to a fascist, a white supremacist, a sexist, a misogynist. Sir Keir Starmer, a bunch of Labour Party activists have been over actively campaigning for Kamala Harris in this. Be a very interesting first phone call, will it not?
Yeah,
if Donald Trump gets in.
There's nothing unusual about that happening. Both sides do that. It's a very opportunistic attack, completely phony one by the Trump camp on that. But I'm someone who once knew Trump quite well personally, and I've long argued he's unfit to be president. So you know where I'm coming from on this. But I wouldn't bet against him winning. I think it's very, very tight. Kamala Harris would definitely win the popular vote. But it's the 7 key swing states that will decide this, and we won't know, I suspect, for a few days the real outcome of this and the repercussions and implications. But certainly, Donald Trump that I knew is a man who could hold a grudge. So whether or not things like David Lammy's comments come back to haunt the Starmer government, who knows? On the other hand, it depends who Trump has around him in his administration, if he wins. But because there could be wiser heads who say, well, don't let old slights influence things. So it's hard to call on that one.
OK, Paul, I am joined by Chris Hope. He's got a question for you.
Hi, Paul. Chris Hope here with Martin in the studio. I just wondered what you thought the attack lines might be of Kevin Badenoch tomorrow to Sir Keir Starmer. I mean, she has broken through the glass ceiling. A black woman leading the Tory party is a moment, no question. And her contention is that the left likes to view black people as victims of oppressive white people, and she would say, I'm showing that isn't the case. Do you think she might go down that route or something different?
She might. I suspect. I'll be very surprised if the farming inheritance issue doesn't come up. And she might just go for for attacking Starmer on various fronts to establish her, if you like, her persona. I mean, if I were a Tory, which I'm not, I would probably have voted for Badenoch against Jenrick, if only because I think she's not a chameleon. She actually believes in what she says. Although she does have the reputation to be able to start a fight in an empty room, in an empty room 2 streets away. But it'd be interesting to see how she handles this, whether she does go in a full-blooded attack or tries a bit more of a measured forensic approach. I mean, I'm a Labour supporter, but there have been quite a few mistakes made by this government, not least on their communication strategy. So I think Keir Starmer could find himself facing quite a ferocious opponent. How effective is the question, of course, but her style will be interesting.
Okay.
Whether any questions are asked about how you're going to handle the outcome of the American election comes up, it might come up from a left field question from a backbencher. I don't think it'll be brought up by Badenoch herself.
OK, Paul, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us on the show, and also thank you to you, Chris Hope. Of course, more from you later in the show. Now, coming up, furious farmers are apparently plotting a sewage strike over Rachel Reeves' inheritance tax raid. We're crossing live to Northern Ireland for the latest. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Penelope's, which is situated in the sophisticated hotel Armano in Covent Garden, delivers punchy dishes from the executive chef's Fez Ozalgan. London-born, she's of Turkish Cypriot heritage, and at the tender age of 16, she enrolled at Catering College. So, it's lovely to see you, Fez. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
So you're now in a very prestigious position. I'm always impressed that in the world of chefing, it's possible to get to very senior positions quite young, if you're good enough. Talent is rewarded, is it not?
Definitely, yeah. It does take a lot of hard work, for sure. But, yes.
When did you know that you wanted to be a chef?
Honestly, because my parents have a cafe in Barking. And I used to go there when I was younger, in school holidays and weekends to help them. And actually, I'll be honest, I just used to really admire everyone calling my dad chef, and that's what I wanted.
And what about your food inspirations? Because I believe the food that you produce now is what? Mediterranean influenced and also to some extent Middle East influenced?
Yeah, and Spanish as well at Penelope's, yeah. So our concept at Penelope's, our CEO, Ariel, he is Israeli, but he grew up in Marbella. So, yeah.
These are the great influences.
Yeah.
What have you brought here today?
OK, so we have our sea bream tartare, which is a really good inspiration of both Spanish and Israeli. It's marinated with harissa, and it's served with a really nice gazpacho sauce, caviar on top.
I wonder whether the camera can see that. It is the most gorgeous coloured sauce on top of my sea bream tartare. That's marvellous.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back. Time is 3:28. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Farmers are threatening to stop spreading sludge on their land in protest at plans to impose inheritance tax on their estates in a so-called sewage strike. Well, GB News' Northern Ireland reporter Dougie Beattie joins me live from County Downs. Dougie, welcome to the show. I always thought they'd be spraying the slurry at Westminster. Instead, they're not putting it on their fields. Tell us more.
Well, what's coming out of farmers here? This is the quiet before the storm, really, Martin, because farmers, what I'm hearing come out of that meeting yesterday, they are surprised at the lack of joined-up thinking in the Labour policy before they actually announced what they were going to do with inheritance tax. They're coming back to their members. Their members are really now planning rallies, etc., over the next couple of weeks. One will take place here in Northern Ireland on the 18th of November. And really, these farmers are saying, hold on. You are taxing assets as wealth, but not only that, the governments are adding up those assets incorrectly. I mean, the Minister for Northern Ireland's Agriculture yesterday said that this would affect 1/3 of the farms in Northern Ireland, and 75% of those would be dairy herds. Well, dairy herds need the most land, so they're obviously judging land as wealth, and that's not the case. If you look at where I'm standing now, I mean, this is a very small acreage of a farm, but the buildings on it are absolutely huge, and they're here to grow primary crops that will be put in next year. And earlier on, I spoke to the owner, Trevor Gabby. Well, you're a propagator of plants, isn't that correct?
That's correct. We grow in excess of 16 million plants for the island of Ireland. So we grow seedlings. We start with seed, and we grow them to seedlings. We then sell them to throughout Ireland. This, in turn, then the farmers grow them into your cauliflowers, your broccoli, your Brussels sprouts. So we work on a very small margin, so we have to do numbers, like a lot of other farms. But what's killing us here at the minute is the wages.
And I mean, the Chancellor very much put up minimum wage and then hit you with national insurance. How's that going to affect you with employment?
Well, we were put up last year by over 10%. We're hit by 6.7% this year. And that's an awful rise. So we put an increase of about 4% on our plants last year, but they're going to take a massive rise this year because basically that 4% wasn't enough. It's going to get a rise again. So what's going to happen is my price of plants, we plants out here, they're going to go up in price. because we have to pay our bills, so we have to increase our prices. So the guy then grows his cabbage, and then he's going to have to look for more money from his processor, from his wholesaler or supermarket, because his prices rise. So you're going to look at inflation. So what they've done is they've just increased inflation.
Oh, well, what you're talking about there, Martin, is inflation. And they're saying that's going to come out in the checkouts. But more importantly now, farmers are now saying, well, all those things we did to keep net zero, to keep carbon down, well, we don't have to do them. We're not going to do them. So we're not going to empty our slurry on time. That'll run into the rivers and the drains out around the place. And I'm sure if most of our viewers are driving along back roads now, farmers get paid a pittance to actually cut the hedges along the hedgerows. They stop doing that. That means local councils will have to do that. Rates are going to go up there. Trees come down. It's farmers that come in with telehandlers, cut up those trees and clear the roads. The farmers are now going to start saying to the government, if you're not going to work with us, if you're stopping our cash flow, well, we will bite back.
Dougie Beattie, an excellent summary as ever. Thank you very much for making it so clear to us. And the NFU president, Tom Bradshaw, he had that crunch meeting yesterday. He'll join me in the next hour. We'll find out exactly what happened in that showdown. Thank you, Dougie Beattie. There's more still to come between now and 4 o'clock, including is Sir Keir Starmer plotting to reverse Brexit? Well, I'll be joined by Brexit guard dog Ben Habib. He's out there. He'll be in here next. I'm Martin Daubney, but first, here's your news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. These are your latest headlines from the GB newsroom. The Queen is unwell with a chest infection and has had to withdraw from her engagements this week. Buckingham Palace released a statement saying Her Majesty the Queen is currently unwell with a chest infection for which her doctors have advised a short period of rest. With great regret, Her Majesty has therefore had to withdraw from her engagements for this week, but she very much hopes to be recovered in time to attend the weekend's remembrance events as normal. She apologises to all those who may have been inconvenienced or disappointed as a result. Sir Keir Starmer has posted on X saying, on behalf of the whole country, I wish Her Majesty the Queen a speedy recovery. The Duchess of Gloucester has stepped in on the behalf of the Queen to attend the annual opening of the Field of Remembrance at Westminster Abbey on Thursday. Americans are heading to the polls across the country today to decide their 47th president in what is being described as a historically close race. As well as choosing who will be the next resident of the White House, Americans will also be electing 435 members of the House of Representatives, 34 Senate seats and 11 state governors. Polling stations have now opened in several states, and moments ago, Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance has cast his vote. The first result has come in from the small town of Dixville Notch in New Hampshire, where Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have tied with 3 votes each. Well, both Harris and Trump spent their final day campaigning in swing states like Pennsylvania and Michigan. Here's what Kamala Harris had to say in Pennsylvania.
We will win. And we will win. We will win. And we will win because when you know what you stand for, you know what to fight for.
Well, Donald Trump spoke to his supporters in Michigan.
But I think we're in very good shape. We just have to show up and you're going to have the biggest victory. You know what this will be? The single greatest victory, politically speaking, in the history of our country.
Meanwhile, back at home, Kemi Badenoch has held her first shadow cabinet meeting today, saying she'll win back the trust of the public with a team effort as she released her full shadow cabinet this morning. Chris Philp has been announced as Shadow Home Secretary, while Jesse Norman has been appointed Shadow Leader of the House. Notably, there is no role for Tom Tugendhat, who was a contender in the leadership race. Other appointments include Badenoch's former rival Robert Jenrick as Shadow Justice Secretary, Mel Stride as a new Shadow Chancellor and Priti Patel as Shadow Foreign Secretary. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club. proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.3007 and €1.1931. The price of gold is £2,106 and 83 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 8,155 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Afternoon, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. We'll keep a lot of cloud overnight, and tomorrow another fairly grey day, but although there'll be a lot of cloud around, most places will be dry and quite mild. Going to turn quite chilly this evening across northern Scotland. We've got some clearer skies here. Some breaks in the cloud elsewhere could allow some fog to form, and it's not completely dry. We'll see some drizzly rain at times this evening across Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, and a bit more rain just coming into the far northwest as the winds pick up a little this evening here too. But for most it'll be dry, quite cloudy, and that will keep the temperatures up. A very mild night in the west. In the east with some clearer skies we could dip down to single figures, and we could, as I say, see some fog patches which may linger through Wednesday morning's rush hour across parts of northern Scotland. We'll keep the clearer skies. So temperatures here through some sheltered glens may not be too far off freezing, but we should also see some brighter spells coming through. Western Scotland starting pretty drab but very mild. Same goes for Northern Ireland. Lots of cloud here, and say lots of cloud just generally everywhere. Thick cloud across the hills and mountains through England and Wales, and some fog patches across the southeast in particular, which may take most of the day to actually clear. So it's another pretty grey day. Some drizzly rain over southwest Scotland. The rain across northwest Scotland, that should clear. Maybe a few more breaks in the cloud over northern England, North Wales compared to today. Better chance seeing a bit of sunshine. Again, the northeast of Scotland favoured for a bit of blue sky. And where we do see some sunshine, temperatures 15, 16 degrees, even where it's rather glum in the east. 12 or 13, so it is pretty mild. It's a very similar story on Thursday. Again, most places dry, a bit more wind. The wind's actually picking up tomorrow in the west and staying pretty breezy around western coasts on Thursday. Again, northern Scotland just poking out there with some sunshine, seeing temperatures into the mid or even high teens. Elsewhere, most places just dry and cloudy with temperatures 11 to 13 degrees.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Hello again. The anti-clock M60 straggling from the M56 towards the Stockport Pyramid at Junction 1. There was an earlier vehicle fire that's now been dealt with, all lanes back open, but still seeing some congestion. Quays 2 southbound for the M66 towards Ramsbottom at Junction 1 again. There was a collision there earlier and it's cleared. Clockwise M25, a couple of breakdowns causing queues. A lane shut from Junction 5, the M26 towards Godstone at 6. Lane 1's also coned off before Watford 19 clockwise. That one's queuing back towards Maple Cross at 17. And in southwest Wales and Carmarthenshire, the A48 closed both ways between the Crosshands roundabout and the M4 junction 49, the Pont Abram roundabout, due to an earlier collision. Heavy traffic on surrounding routes.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Court cases.
A presidential dropout.
Assassination attempts.
This has been a US election like no other.
And if the polls are correct, it's on a knife edge.
Stay up with us as the drama unfolds and America decides their next president.
We'll discuss what it means for them, for the world, and for our special relationship. America Decides, tonight from 11.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back. Time is 3:40. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. The Prime Minister has said he will seek a renegotiation again of its Brexit deal with Brussels in a bid to tackle the small boats crisis. And this is so that we can take charge of international investigations into people smugglers. But what will the European Union expect in return? Well, somebody who knows there's no such thing as a free lunch in Brussels unless it's on expenses is the Brexit guard dog and the former deputy leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib. Ben, as soon as I heard the phrase yesterday, we want closer ties with Interpol on data sharing, my antennae twitched, and I know yours did too, because baked into Brexit, the notion of sharing data was if we want anything extra in that, they're going to want something in return. Damn sure as well.
Well, they kept telling us that they weren't going to share their data with us, and what a great loss it would be to the United Kingdom. But before I answer the question, can I just say that, you know, we tend to think of cooperation between nation-states as genuine cooperation between nation-states. But it isn't when it comes to the EU. If you're talking about cooperation on a judicial basis, on an intelligence basis, or a military basis, that is not cooperation as equals. That is cooperation under the direction of Brussels. Brussels always has its political foot on the pedal. And so when we talk about intelligence cooperation with the European Union so that we can lead the charge on tackling the people smuggling gangs, actually what he's saying is that we will be giving up our independent intelligence gathering ability to control by Brussels. And it's a slightly different, it's a very significant, but slightly different nuance to the way he would portray it. They always portray it as this equals coming together. It's never about equals. And the notion that we somehow in the United Kingdom, with our 5 domestic agencies that comprise Border Security Command, this new command that Labour put together. The notion that we in the UK can suddenly step into Europe, sort out the people smuggling gangs, which Interpol has singularly failed to do, is for the birds. And so it's just a pretext, Martin. It's a pretext to get closer intelligence cooperation, which will be closer security cooperation, which all goes hand in glove with closer military cooperation. And closer military cooperation, again, just to reiterate at the risk of having reiterated too much, will be under the direction of Brussels. It's not like NATO, where countries come together and say, for a common purpose, we will serve together. This will be under the direction of Brussels.
My problem with all of this, you know, let's get cosy with Interpol, let's get cosy with Brussels, they've been provably useless so far. I mean, all the people that come to Britain, we have no idea who they are. The fingerprints haven't been taken already in any one of the numerous member states they waltz through to get to Dover. Interpol have singly failed on that front. Why would it be any different if we give more data? Where are these arrests? I want to see blokes, you know, tied to a chair. Here's a Mr. Big we caught in Syria. If this is a war on drugs, we expect to see the bounties, the fruits of the labour. We haven't seen anything.
We don't see any people smugglers being taken to account, do we? When was the last time we saw a people smuggler being arrested or put on trial? Or, you know, maybe there is a rare occasion that where one of the viewers can prove me wrong, but it is very, very rare if it happens. I mean, it seems to me that it's basically a cottage industry, and actually it's the people who are being smuggled who literally do most of the legwork. It was interesting when Germany reimposed its borders, it instantly found would-be terrorist criminals trying to get into Germany and stopped them. Do you remember? And it comes back to this. If we're talking about illegal migration, it comes back to this. You've got to have borders. If you don't have borders, and the EU, effectively the Schengen zone in the EU has taken down its borders, you can't control the flow of people.
Now, Yvette Cooper said yesterday, we can't solve this alone. We can't just shout at the sea, you know, channeling her inner King Canute. Perhaps. We have to work with our European partners. It makes most sense to do that. Do they have a point?
No. Since when does the protection of the United Kingdom turn on a foreign partner? We have our own military services. We have our own personal agency. We have our own government that is obliged to the British people. It should be our boats. And, I mean, she's pretty close to the answer when she says shouting at the sea. Actually, what we need are speedboats with well-trained people, drones, barrages, whatever it takes to identify, intercept the dinghies and require them to turn round. They made the 12.5-mile journey to the point of our territorial waters. They can make the 12.5-mile journey back to France.
But if we try and do that, that will no doubt, they will say, break all sorts of conventions at sea. Or
there are no conventions
break UN conventions. It will risk a diplomatic incident with France.
Great. Let's have it out with France. They've got the thick end of £1 billion of British taxpayers' money on the promise that they would stop the boats from launching from their beaches. They haven't stopped it. In fact, these boats now are coming all the way down French canals, launching deep inside France, coming through their canals into the Channel and into our waters. We need to show political will and a bit of muscle to protect our borders. What is a government's first duty? It's to protect its people. How can you protect its people if you have people coming into the country about whom you know nothing?
OK, let's just read out a statement here from Sir Keir Starmer. Here's what he said on the matter at Glasgow at that Interpol conference. He said, "I don't think the deal we got was a particularly good one. I don't think we did as well as we should have done when it came to the question of cross-border crime and security. And that's why I want to improve upon it. And that can be done at the EU level." Ben Habib, we have to leave it there. Thanks for joining us in the studio. Always a pleasure to have your company. Now, still to come, we'll be crossing to South Africa, where Prince William has been playing rugby with children in Cape Town. Wonderful. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Millions are struggling to stay warm with the wet weather, the cost of living and, of course, cuts to fuel payments.
Yes, winter is fast approaching, so it's crucial to find cost-effective ways to save on your energy expenses whilst staying reasonably warm.
So joining us to provide advice on heating your home, or at least staying warm somehow, is one of the leading voices on lowering energy bills, Nick Miles. And you are very welcome in here this morning. I mean, a lot of people would say, well, in the olden days, you just used to put on an extra jumper. But actually, it's more serious than that, isn't it? What is the best way, the most cost-effective way, to keep your home warm?
Some of the bigger things is we need to do more things on insulating our properties, but actually sometimes, it can be simple things like turning down a thermostat. Those that have got the luxury of being able to afford energy bills and keep their homes on the thermostat a bit too high. If you just turn it down by one simple degree, as long as you keep it between 18 and 22 degrees, can save up to 5 to 10% of your energy bill. So that's a kind of a very simple way of doing things, but it can be other little tips and tricks you can do as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I always get it when people say about this, but like 18 degrees is not warm for a house.
No, and it's twofold actually. It's that kind of relative temperature, but also it's the kind of drafts and things you have in your house. So it's the comfort factor. So what we have a lot of old properties in our country. You've got some 8 million hard-to-treat properties built before World War II that have got poor insulation, but also very, very drafty. So it's the temperature and it's the kind of the draftiness of them that kind of keeps us uncomfortable.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Court cases.
A presidential dropout.
Assassination attempts.
This has been a US election like no other.
And if the polls are correct, it's on a knife edge.
Stay up with us as the drama unfolds and America decides their next president.
We'll discuss what it means for them, for the world, and for our special relationship. America Decides, tonight from 11.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back. Your time is 10 to 4. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, of course, all eyes at the moment all over on the other side of the pond. The voting is now kicking off in America. The greatest political show on earth. We'll bring you the full details on that, of course, throughout the show. But before that, the Prince of Wales has met with South Africa's president today as he continues a week of events in Cape Town focused on environmental protection. He'll also be joined by the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, for a meeting with South African Foreign Minister Ronald Lamola. And let's hear now from GB News' war correspondent Cameron Walker, who is in Cape Town.
Well, Prince William's had a busy day championing a cause he cares about, but also fulfilling his duties as the future king with the British government and helping them shore up international relations between the United Kingdom and South Africa. So he started the day nice and early at Signal Point, which is a tourist beauty spot really, in the Table Mountain National Park just outside of Cape Town. You can see Robben Island, where Nelson Mandela was imprisoned for 18 years, and you can see Table Mountain clearly as well. But the whole area is rich in biodiversity of rare plants, rare animals, and it's a huge task trying to conserve that for future generations. And Prince William was meeting young conservationists who are all volunteers who aim very much to preserve it all for future generations, alongside Robert Irwin, the conservationist who's also an Earthshot Prize Global Ambassador. But following that engagement, Prince William took off his eco-friendly shirt and put on a tie to go for a high-level meeting with the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa. The Foreign Secretary David Lammy was there as well. It's all suggesting that the new government is still very much seeing the royal family as a bit of an asset when it comes to soft diplomacy and international relations between two nations. And we've got some information to exactly what was discussed during that meeting. So the Prince thanks the President for his support with the Earthshot Prize, Prince William's environmental prize to find solutions to repair the planet. They also talked about Prince William being tackled on a rugby pitch yesterday at Ocean View School just outside of Cape Town. It was a group of children being lifted out of child poverty through rugby. It's the Atlas Foundation is the charity who is involved in that. They also talked about Prince William's landmark speech happening later on today at the United for Wildlife Summit. We'll be live on GB News following that speech to give you all the details on that. But of course, they also talked about the importance of the bilateral relationship between the United Kingdom and South Africa. It's seen really this whole meeting between the President and Prince William as a follow-up to the 2022 state visit where the South African president travelled to London, hosted by King Charles. It was King Charles's first state visit he was hosting as monarch back in 2022 in November. But the British High Commissioner has spoken to GB News, and he's suggesting that the royal family's diplomatic role is the highest level that you can engage with, and the policy underpinning any given event is then followed up with other meetings by government ministers. So it's going to be interesting to see what Prince William's impact has had here in South Africa when it comes to that soft diplomatic power between two nations, Britain and South Africa.
Thank you, Cam Walker there in South Africa. The royal tour continues. Now, still to come, we'll get to all of the latest analysis on the latest US presidential election from a former White House chief ethics lawyer. Now, got pictures on your screen there. That's Cincinnati, Ohio, I believe. No, it's not. This is actually Palm Beach, Florida. Now, I've been told in about the next 10 minutes, Donald Trump is due to appear here. Of course, Florida is a state which has long been held as a Republican stronghold, somewhere he's always done very, very well. Expected to turn out there and perhaps place his vote. Yesterday, an astonishing rally in North Carolina we covered on the show here when Donald Trump said he would place 25% tariffs on anything and everything imported to America from Mexico unless thousands of troops were placed on the Mexican border to stop what he called is the invasion. Fighting Talk, the greatest show on earth. That's all coming. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel. Now it's your weather with Alex Deakin.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Afternoon, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. We'll keep a lot of cloud overnight, and tomorrow another fairly grey day, but although there'll be a lot of cloud around, most places will be dry and quite mild. Going to turn quite chilly this evening across northern Scotland. We've got some clearer skies here. Some breaks in the cloud elsewhere could allow some fog to form, and it's not completely dry. We'll see some drizzly rain at times this evening across Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, and a bit more rain just coming into the far northwest as the winds pick up a little this evening here too. But for most it'll be dry, quite cloudy, and that will keep the temperatures up. A very mild night in the west. In the east with some clearer skies we could dip down to single figures, and we could, as I say, see some fog patches which may linger through Wednesday morning's rush hour across parts of northern Scotland. Will keep the clearer skies. So temperatures here through some sheltered glens may not be too far off freezing, but we should also see some brighter spells coming through. Western Scotland starting pretty drab but very mild. Same goes for Northern Ireland. Lots of cloud here. here, and say lots of cloud just generally everywhere. Thick cloud across the hills and mountains through England and Wales, and some fog patches across the southeast in particular, which may take most of the day to actually clear. So it's another pretty grey day. Some drizzly rain over southwest Scotland, the rain across northwest Scotland, that should clear. Maybe a few more breaks in the cloud over northern England, North Wales compared to today. Better chance seeing a bit of sunshine. Again, the northeast of Scotland favoured for a bit of blue sky. And where we do see some sunshine, temperatures 15, 16 degrees, even where it's rather glum in the east. 12 or 13, so it is pretty mild. It's a very similar story on Thursday. Again, most places dry, a bit more wind. The wind's actually picking up tomorrow in the west and staying pretty breezy around western coasts on Thursday. Again, northern Scotland just poking out there with some sunshine, seeing temperatures into the mid or even high teens. Elsewhere, most places just dry and cloudy with temperatures 11 to 13 degrees.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon again. Hello, I'm Jules Buckley. Guiseley, West Yorkshire, issues for the Otley Road this afternoon. That's the A65. It's closed between Springfield Road and Park Road at the scene there of a collision. Northbound side of the M6, if you're heading away from the Stafford services up towards Stoke at 15, a lane shut for breakdown. That's between 14 and 15. A couple of issues in Wales this afternoon. St Asaph in Denbighshire, the A525, the St Asaph Road, shut by the Oriel Hotel and queuing at the scene of a collision. In Carmarthenshire, the A48 closed both ways between the Crosshands roundabout and the M4 junction 49, the Pont Abram roundabout, as a serious collision there continues to be investigated. Queuing there on all approaches, and lane 1's combed off clockwise M25 at Drygate junction 8. A little bit slow there. It's at the scene of an accident. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
You can win. Good luck.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, as millions of Americans head to the polls, can Donald Trump pull off the political comeback of the century and be voted in as the 47th President of the United States? Or will Democrat Kamala Harris nudge it? We'll be live from the land of the free, covering the greatest political show on earth, and that is Palm Beach, Florida. Donald Trump's due there in around 10 minutes' time. Yesterday, the president of the National Farmers Union, Tom Bradshaw, had a crunch meeting with the Environment Minister to relay the fury of British farmers after Labour's inheritance tax heist. Are we heading for Farmageddon, farmer strikes, mass protests and even food shortages? Well, Tom will join me on GB News to give our viewers the lie of the land. And this afternoon, Julie Dawn of the Firework campaign delivered a million-strong petition to Downing Street, calling for the banning of fireworks outside of the big firework days. Now, she wants to safeguard people, animals and pets from injury and distress. Julie will join me in the studio. Is it a banger of an idea or a bit of a damp squib? And I absolutely love this story. 2 Italian restaurants in Bivington near Sheffield have gone above and beyond the call of duty this remembrance. They're giving away free meals to all armed service veterans all week. And I'll be joined by the legendary duo, the father and son from Seti Colli and Paolo's, who, in my opinion, deserve a medal for their patriotic generosity. That's all coming up in your next hour. Well, the show, always a pleasure to have your company. Well, the polling booths are open stateside. All bets are off. It's as close, some believe, as the flip of a coin, whereas some polls have Donald Trump leading in all 7 swing states. But what happens if it's a very, very close victory either way? Could there be the mother of all lawsuits? Well, after the news, I'll be joined by an ethical legal expert for the full inside story on that. Who do you want to win the presidential election, and what do you think it means for Great Britain? Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. But now here's your headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. Good afternoon. It's just gone 4 o'clock. These are your headlines from the GB Newsroom. The Queen is unwell with a chest infection and has had to withdraw from her engagements this week. Buckingham Palace released a statement saying Her Majesty the Queen is currently unwell with a chest infection, for which her doctors have advised a short period of rest. With great regret, Her Majesty has therefore had to withdraw from her engagements for this week, but she very much hopes to be recovered in time to attend this weekend's remembrance events as normal. She apologises to all those who may be inconvenienced or disappointed as a result. Sir Keir Starmer posted on X saying, on behalf of the whole country, I wish Her Majesty the Queen a speedy recovery. The Duchess of Gloucester has stepped in on the Queen's behalf to attend the annual opening of the Field of Remembrance at Westminster Abbey on Thursday. Americans are heading to the polls across the country today to decide their 47th president in what is being described as a historically close race. As well as choosing who will be the next resident of the White House, Americans will also be electing 435 members of the House of Representatives, 34 Senate seats and 11 state governors. Polling stations have now opened in all states. Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance has already cast his vote. The first result came in from the small town of Dixville Notch in New Hampshire, where Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have tied with 3 votes each. Well, both Harris and Trump spent their final day campaigning in swing states like Pennsylvania and Michigan. Here's what Kamala Harris had to say in Pennsylvania.
We will win. And we will win. We will win. And we will win because when you know what you stand for, you know what to fight for.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump spoke to his supporters in Michigan.
But I think we're in very good shape. We just have to show up and you're going to have the biggest victory. You know what this will be? The single greatest victory, politically speaking, in the history of our country.
Back at home, Kemi Badenoch has held her first shadow cabinet meeting today, saying she will win back the trust of the public with a team effort as she released her full shadow cabinet this morning. Chris Philp has been announced as Shadow Home Secretary, while Jessie Norman has been appointed Shadow Leader of the House. Notably, there is no role for Tom Tugendhat, who is a contender in the leadership race. Yesterday, Badenoch's former rival, Robert Jenrick, accepted the role of Shadow Justice Secretary, while the former Work and Pension Secretary, Mel Stride, is a new Shadow Chancellor. And former Home Secretary, Priti Patel, has been appointed Shadow Foreign Secretary. The new co-chair of the Conservative Party, Nigel Huddleston, spoke to Eamon and Isabel earlier.
It was very clear that she wanted to offer roles to all of her opponents because she has a great degree of respect for them. All of those who wish to serve and all of the names you mentioned, they are talents in the party, and one of the key things Kemi wants to do is unite the party and make sure that we draw in all the talents in terms of those serving in the shadow team.
In other news, Sir Alan Bates is giving evidence to a parliamentary committee over compensation for victims of the Post Office Horizon scandal. The Post Office campaigner told MPs he has written to the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, twice in the last month, but is still waiting for a response. In his letter, he demanded a March 2025 deadline for compensation for sub-postmaster victims of the Horizon scandal, reminding the Prime Minister the clock is still ticking on a financial redress deadline. And the tobacco and vapes bill will be introduced in Parliament today. The Health Secretary Wes Streeting told GB News this morning that the government won't proceed with banning smoking in some outdoor hospitality venues for now. Labour wants to take tougher action to better protect the public, NHS and the economy from the harms of smoking. A ban may be imposed in playgrounds and outside schools. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Martin.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Now, Americans head to the polls today to decide whether Kamala Harris or Donald Trump will become the next president, the 47th president of the United States. That's one of the tightest presidential races in history, as both candidates are tied neck and neck in the 7 key battleground states that are likely to swing this historic election. Now, we'll hear from Donald Trump shortly from Palm Beach. Live shots on your screens there. Palm Beach, Florida. Donald Trump is due to appear very shortly, although normally he's about an hour or two late. Well, joining me now is the White House chief ethics lawyer during George W. Bush's administration, Richard Painter. Richard, welcome to the show. A pleasure to have somebody of your stature on the show today. So, however you look at this, it appears to be very finely balanced, although some polls have Donald Trump leading in all 7 states, the key swing states. Nate Silver, the respected opinion pollster, saying it's as close as the flip of a coin. What's the latest in terms of that? And then I'd like to ask you about what might happen next in terms of the legal case if either side will win by a small margin.
Well, we will see what happens. I don't trust polls today any more than the polls we had that showed Hillary Clinton beating Donald Trump in 2016. The voters will make their decisions today. Many voters have already cast their ballots, and the votes will be counted over the next few days. And if it is a very close race, there will be legal challenges. We have legal challenges in Bush versus Gore in 2024 years ago. That was indeed an extremely close race that came down to several hundred votes in Florida. The 2020 race between Joe Biden and Donald Trump was not a close race, and the court cases were frivolous, the claims of election fraud frivolous, and this race hopefully can be resolved. We will have a winner in the next few days. Maybe there'll be some litigation over several of the states. We don't know, but we need to have a peaceful transition of power as we always have in the United States, with the exception of our Civil War in 1861 and the riot at the Capitol in January of 2021. We cannot tolerate violence in a representative democracy.
And Richard Painter, you may have heard of Nigel Farage, a political figure from this side of the pond. He's with the Trump campaign at the moment. He was saying to Donald Trump, please, if you lose, go and play golf. Take it on the chin. Take it well. But there's so much at stake, and the margins could be so fine, as you correctly pointed out, there could be legal cases. What kind of thing do we think they may be along the lines of? We've heard, for example, Democrats still unhappy about the alleged hush money paid. Might they go after that kind of an angle because they say that suppressing that may have impacted the vote? Could that be one line of attack?
No, I don't think that any claims of election fraud or certainly misinformation are going to reverse the vote. We had a lot of misinformation in 2016 coming from Russia that did affect the vote, but Donald Trump was elected president of the United States. The vote is the way the vote is, and the election challenges in court would be narrowly focused on counting ballots and whether invalid ballots are being counted or whether votes that should be counted have not been counted. We'll see what happens. If it is like the Bush versus Gore situation, of course, that comes down to a couple of hundred votes in one state, that could be a situation that would take several weeks to resolve. But once again, we resolve these matters in the courts, and we're not going to have people taking to the streets and seeking to overturn the results of our election.
And yet, Richard Painter, we have seen pictures of businesses being boarded up, McDonald's, high streets, malls being boarded up in anticipation of some civil unrest in some areas. Do you think that the media narrative, the landscape to this election may have played a part? Donald Trump continually says that the establishment media, big tech, has been very, very against him throughout this race. Do you think he has a point?
Well, the media is going to take the position they do. He has Elon Musk on his side. Elon Musk has control of X and many ways of reaching voters. So the idea that the media is against one candidate or another, I think, is somewhat of a farce. We've always had media involved in our elections on one side or another, and sometimes the media being neutral. For example, the Washington Post did not endorse a candidate, neither did the LA Times. But the fact of the matter is that we have a winner, we have a loser. And just getting people worked up about the media and attacking the press, that's a fundamental threat to our democracy when the right of the media to oppose or support a candidate comes under attack. And once again, I think that these rumors of violence are being hyped up. Yes, there's some extremists who want to engage in violence. We had it here in Minnesota during the riots after the murder of George Floyd, and we had to board up businesses here as well. And then Governor Walz did send out the National Guard. And sometimes you can have some violence after elections. But what happened at the United States Capitol on January 6th of 2021 was inexcusable. Our governors are not going to tolerate violence in any of our states. And the false rumors that somehow Joe Biden, the president of the United States, is thinking of using the military after this election, those false rumors, lies have been stirred up in the far-right media, need to be ignored. We are going to have an election. We're going to have a winner. We're going to have a peaceful transition of power in January.
And Richard Painter, as we approach the polling final hours, Bill Clinton famously said it's the economy, stupid, that always seems to sway it. The economy, of course, has been a huge conversation during this. There's been massive inflation in America, same as this side of the pond. And also a lot of talk about the open border with Mexico and abortion. Which of these big decisions, big factors do you think will finally sway it?
Well, the economy is a very important issue, particularly in the Rust Belt states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And while the economy has been growing a lot over the past decade, with the exception of the coronavirus period, and yes, a bout of inflation after that, but that's coming under control. The problem in the United States is that a lot of Americans don't benefit from economic growth. Working Americans are not benefiting as much as they should. An enormous amount of money is going to the billionaires. And I say this as a former Republican, and I think the Republican Party has often had wise economic policies, but we in the United States do need to focus on making sure that working families have an opportunity to benefit from our growing economy, not just those who own stocks with a booming stock market. And both candidates needed to focus on that issue a lot more. And whoever becomes the next president needs to look after all Americans, not the very, very rich, who unfortunately influence our elections, whether it's Elon Musk or billionaires on the Democratic side. We need a government that represents ordinary people in this country.
Excellent stuff. Thank you for your expert insights. Richard Painter, who was the White House chief ethics lawyer during George W. Bush's administration. Thank you for joining us here on GB News. Now, the new Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch, has gathered her shadow cabinet for the first time this morning. The big jobs went some familiar faces. Dame Priti Patel as shadow foreign secretary, Mel Stride as shadow chancellor. Former Home Office Minister Chris Philp will serve as the new shadow Home Secretary. But there was no job for leadership candidate Tom Tugendhat. And joining me now in the studio is GB News' political editor Chris Hope. Chris, you're looking excited at your screen there. You've got some news for me.
Got some news, yeah, on the shape of the team below the shadow cabinet you mentioned there. Many as our viewers know, Priti Patel in as shadow foreign secretary. But for me, it is the shallow cabinet as much as the shadow cabinet, Martin, because you have got lots of big beasts not part of this team. James Cleverly, Jeremy Hunt, Oliver Dowden and others, Steve Barclay, names who are known to our viewers, well recognised on the media. They're taking a step back, allowing a new generation maybe to shine. Let's wait and see on that. But concerns amongst those who backed people like Robert Jenrick that only 3 of the 25 slots filled on the shadow cabinet were actually people who supported or were Robert Jenrick. Those people were Vicky Atkins and Ed Arger. Concerned about that. So we have got a briefing now on more appointments. So very briefly, Gagin Monhindra is the shadow deputy chief whip. Mark Francois, very well known to GBNews viewers, he's the new number 2 in the defence team below James Cartley. He's a shadow defence minister, Minister of State for Defence. Kieran Mullen is the shadow Minister of State for Justice below Robert Jenrick. And on background, Tory sources tell GB News this hour that Gagin was an early backer of James Cleverly, Mark was a strong backer of Robert Jenrick, and Kieran backed Kemi. These appointments, they tell us, are further evidence of Kemi Badenoch reaching out across the party to unify, because there are still concerns, that the top team is very Kemi heavy.
And those roles you mentioned out, it offers some balance, but they are secondary.
They are second tier.
They're second tier roles, so the big front bench of the shadow cabinet has been filled with Kemi support. Does this make it a narrow front? I mean, Ben Habib was in a short while ago saying CCHQ seems to have been taken over by Remainers.
Well, Ben Habib, of course, is someone who's a Reform Party supporter or an activist. I mean, he would say that because they're a rival to his party. She says, Kemi Badenoch, my team draws on talents from across our party based on meritocracy, she says, with a breadth of experience and perspective. Now it's time to get to work, holding Labour to account, rebuilding our party, but based on conservative principles. So they would say not that. Tom Tugendhat, though, is along with James Cleverly, is one of the candidates who stood against Kemi Badenoch, who's not part of the team. That is surprising, because all he was before this was a former security minister, whereas the other big beast had big jobs at the top level of cabinet. He never has. And I don't quite understand why he's chosen to step back. It may be he wants to be a kind of, and this is me saying it, not him confirming it, but maybe if there's concerns about the leadership, they go towards Tom Tugendhat as a kind of prince across the water. Don't forget the Tory Reform Group, left of centre, didn't back either candidates in the final two, Robert Jenrick or Kemi Badenoch, in this leadership election.
It's fair to say that the most recognisable names, other than Dame Priti Patel, are the ones who are sitting this one out. You know, Jeremy Hunt, James Cleverly, Dowden, Andrew Mitchell, Steve Barclay. What's their game? Are they a kind of backbench cabinet, a cabinet in waiting, perhaps a lot of potential mischief makers there?
I think if they were here, they would say they're there to support Kemi Badenoch. I think some of those, if not all, have issued supportive messages on social media about Kemi Badenoch. Now's the time to get behind the new leader. 4 years until the next election. Don't forget, as we revealed on GB News on Saturday, the threshold to force a vote of no confidence in the new leader has gone up from 19 MPs to 41 MPs, a third of the party, so hard to get rid of her.
OK, thank you very much, Chris, for joining us in the studio. Always a pleasure. Now, moving on, is the budget going to have catastrophic effects on family businesses? Well, senior advisor to the Tax Reform Council and Telegraph columnist Brian Monteith joins me now. Brian, welcome to the show. You wrote an excellent piece in the Telegraph claiming that Rachel Reeves's budget was Marxist. Tell us more.
Yes, I see it as inspired by Marxism, because very simply, it's about breaking the power of families up. It's about taking land from people and being able to redistribute wealth and land as the government sees fit. And you don't have to be a Marxist revolutionary to support these policies. You can do them through social democracy. And that is, in fact, what Rachel Reeves and Sir Keir Starmer are proposing. They're putting through inheritance tax policies that will actually mean people have to sell their assets because they cannot afford to inherit.
And James Dyson, of course, James Dyson, he blasted this budget as spiteful and cruel. And we've had a great many business owners, small business owners on here, Brian Monteith, saying that precisely that, you know, they're looking at generations. We actually had a real-life son of a toolmaker on the show. He ran a tool-making industry up in the West Midlands. He was saying that the government has no idea about assets, about machinery, about all the business assets that will come under inheritance tax. That means 3 generations of toolmakers could be coming to an end there. We've heard the same from farmers. So is this just fundamentally getting it wrong?
Well, the thing about the death tax is that, of course, it actually is an extra tax. It's double or even triple taxation because people actually gather assets after paying their tax. And then when they die, the people that inherit have to pay tax to receive it. The result of the policies just exposes how ideological the government is, because if they in fact did what's happened in Australia and abolished the death tax, they'd actually see taxes revenues rise. Because what happens is, instead of people fleeing a country to go to Dubai or Switzerland or even Portugal or Italy, where taxes are lower for the wealthiest, they will stay here and they'll pay their taxes here. And we can see that there are farms that aren't even as big as the average size, going for £4 million. That will take them well into the inheritance tax liability, because of course there's other things to include as well, such as tractors, farmhouses, machinery, produce, livestock. All these things get added in. It's not just the farmland itself. So the likelihood is that people in the families receiving the inheritance will have to sell their farms or sell their businesses because they can't afford to receive them.
OK, Brian Monteith, we have to leave it there. We've simply run out of time. Thank you very much for joining us on the show, and also thanks to you, Chris Hope, here in the studio. Now, are we heading for Farmageddon? Well, the president of the National Farmers Union, Tom Bradshaw, he had a crunch meeting yesterday with the Environment Minister, Steve Reed. And he joins me next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Recruiters are warning that if you're not tech savvy, you could be missing out with your CV failing to make it through an AI-powered sifting process. So we've gone from sort of computer says no HR people ticking boxes to AI, right? Is that right?
Yes, well, this applies once you're in the job as well, as a recent report revealed that employees expect AI will manage an average of a third of their tasks within the next 12 months. Well, joining us now to discuss this is Cosmo Curry, founder of Van Kuysen, a leading company in technology recruitment.
Morning, Cosmo.
Morning.
Good
Hi,
morning.
Ben.
Well,
Hi.
yeah,
Pleasure.
thank you for joining us. It's very interesting, isn't it? Because AI is, of course, on the rise, and now in the workplace and in universities and things. Another article came to mind. There was a student recently, I think it was in the news just the other day, that got in trouble for using AI. So there's, you know, for exam purposes and essays. So there's lots of different ways that it can be a good thing and a bad thing. But you're, of course, here to talk about the ways in which AI is a good thing within the workplace.
Absolutely. I mean, AI is here to stay, for sure. And we're seeing this rise of people using it in such a clever format. And the other side of it is also we're seeing people who are using it and during the process of that, they are losing their character. We're losing the actual insight into the individual behind that. And so we've kind of got this kind of mix. And I think AI is phenomenal when you're looking at it from a point of view of optimization, point of view of speed, getting results. But I think we have to remember that, you know, the fundamental of recruitment is people. And we cannot substitute the people, the personal aspect, by replacing that with AI.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:26. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, it's fury with the farmers as they are threatening to stop spreading sludge on their land in protest that plans to impose inheritance tax on their estates, because farmers are threatening to stop spreading that because they are furious about the so-called coordinated sewage strike, which may be coming. And yesterday, the president of the National Farmers Union, Tom Bradshaw, had a crunch meeting with the Environment Minister, Steve Reid, to relay the fury of British farmers. And Tom joins me on the show now. Tom, welcome to GB News. You were on the show on Friday. You had a crunch meeting with Steve Reid yesterday. You were saying that you'd never seen farmers so furious. Can I ask you, what deal did you ask for and what did you get?
We need to have this policy overturned. The unintended consequences are incredibly real. The human impact, the impact on food production, they just have not been thought through. We believe the Treasury figures are wrong, that they're only looking at agricultural property relief, where many farms will also have business property relief. But it's really this human impact. The changes have been brought in immediately, and they do not realise the pressure that they're putting on the older generation. The industry are quite rightly absolutely furious about the changes that have come around, having been told by the Secretary of State that they would not make changes to agricultural property relief. We need to get in front of the Treasury. So that the request from the meeting yesterday with the Secretary of State, and we also had the Treasury Minister there, James Murray, was for me to have a meeting with the Chancellor. It's absolutely urgent that we get in front of the Chancellor to help them understand that the policy put forward by Treasury officials is wrong, and they should not have adopted it in the way they have.
Tom, we've been hearing from our Westminster sources the current 1 million figure clearly has just incurred the wrath of the farming community and of your own. We were hearing that you'd be happy with a figure nearer to 10 million. What do you say to that?
I say there's absolutely no public negotiation going on here whatsoever. We need them to reverse the policy. It is simply unacceptable the way that they have brought this change in. I was delighted when in their manifesto, they spoke about food security being a critical part of national security. To deliver that, we need fairness in the supply chain to make sure everyone gets a fair return. We need to make sure that we only import food produced to the same standards. We need to deliver on the commitment around public procurement and sourcing of British food. Then let's have a conversation around tax. Instead, we've got a budget that has increased the cost of food production and made a change they promised they would not make. How that is a fair deal for farmers and food production, I just cannot comprehend.
Tom Bradshaw, I'm also joined in the studio by our political editor, Chris Hope. He has a question for you.
Hi, Tom. Yeah, we asked in the lobby meeting today with the PM spokesman whether you have met or saw a meeting with Keir Starmer. Have you ever met him before? And is there a blind spot, do you think, amongst the top brass who run the country about the issues facing farming?
Look, I would be delighted to get in front of Sir Keir Starmer and the Chancellor Rachel Reeves. They need to understand the very urgent, personal, human impacts that this policy change is putting on intergenerational families. It is simply unacceptable to be living under the pressure that those families are living under today. And the Prime Minister and the Chancellor have to own that. If they are happy with those human impacts, then they have to own that, because it is simply not acceptable to have made this change, having promised not to, with no consultation.
Tom Bradshaw, when we spoke with you on Friday, we also spoke with several farmers and subsequently yesterday also here on GB News, and many of them are absolutely sick to the back teeth. One of them said that they're hearing in their network about plans to simply stop producing, to down tools. Maybe it'll take empty shelves, no food, no farmers, no food before the politicians finally wake up.
Look, I desperately want to work in partnership with this government to deliver the thriving future that the farming and food industry needs to deliver for this country, that delivers food security, that attracts the brightest and the best talent into our industry. Unfortunately, we've got off on completely the wrong foot with the budget announcements that we had last week. There's still time for the government to recognise they've got this wrong, and then we can look at how we deliver that thriving food system that delivers food security and that profitable future that everybody wants to be part of.
Chris.
Tom, there's lots of chat here in Westminster about your march and your plans for the 19th of November. Sketch out what the idea is. Will it be a go slow through London? Will there be, I don't know what you... I mean, we saw how the French do their demonstrations, that they can be quite dramatic. What are you planning at the NFU?
Look, the NFU is organising a coordinated mass lobby of Parliament. We have members coming to London that will have meetings booked with their constituency MPs. They want to look them in the whites of the eye. They want to ask them whether they are going to back this family farm tax or whether they will fight to overturn it. We need them to understand the consequences for members' farms right the way across the United Kingdom, so they can decide whether they are willing to put their name against this family farm tax or whether they will support us in overturning the proposals that have been put forward. It is peaceful. It's got a very clear ambition to overturn the family farm tax.
Tom Bradshaw, I've got to say, since this was announced, we've had thousands and thousands of messages sent to us, you'll say, here at GB News, and 99.99% of those are hugely supportive of British farmers, of what you're going through. And I've got to say, some of them saying, forget about threatening to stop putting sewage on your fields. How about spraying some sewage on Westminster? We see that happen in France. We see the Gilets jaunes get militant. Are we simply being too polite here in Britain? Is it time to channel our inner revolution?
No, look, I genuinely believe that we need to take the actions that are within our control. That is this coordinated, controlled lobby of our parliamentarians that have been elected to represent us, that need to decide whether they are willing to support the changes with the pressure that brings on family farmers right the way across the country. At the NFU, we're focused on outcomes. I've been focusing on that ever since the budget. We have to get in front of the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, and we can get this overturned. They can understand they have this wrong, and we will work with them. Whatever the policy outcome they were looking for, I don't know what the exam question was at the moment. I don't know what they're looking to achieve with the changes that they've made. But let's have that open conversation.
OK, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us. And that's the President of the National Farmers Union, Tom Bradshaw. And thank you also to Chris Hope. Now, in the next few minutes, Prince William is expected to speak at an environment summit from South Africa. But in the meantime, let's speak to GB News' royal correspondent, Cameron Walker, who joins me now live from Cape Town. Cameron, welcome to the show. What can we expect from the Prince?
Hi, Martin. Well, this is very much the Oscars of the conservation world. It's the global alliance set up by Prince William just over 10 years ago, actually, the United for Wildlife, and it's aiming to tackle the illegal wildlife trade and the trafficking of animal products. And it's Prince William's convening power, really, which has created this global alliance, and it's the private sector, law enforcement as well, charities, governments, all working together to A, raise awareness, and then B, actually tackle the poachers, disrupt their business model, and therefore stop the illegal trafficking of wildlife products, because it does, it's claimed, cost billions of pounds to the global economy each year, undermines regional and national security, it fuels corruption, it's claimed, money laundering as well, and disease transmission, because clearly animals carry diseases. If they transferred over a border, that disease ends up in another country. And of course, the inevitable endangering vulnerable species. And the United for Wildlife in the last 10 years has actually had a bit of an impact already, thanks to Prince William and his charity, the Royal Foundation. 650 criminal cases, 600 arrests, 350 seizures of wildlife products, and 120,000 people have been trained to tackle the illegal wildlife trade. South Africa is one of the pioneers, really, in this kind of field. But it is hugely, hugely dangerous work, particularly for rangers of wildlife national parks. And sadly, many do lose their lives. Anton Mazimba, for example, he was gunned down in his own home in front of his children and wife just 2 years ago. It's thought the people who killed him were paid by a poaching ring right here in South Africa. And unfortunately, I'm afraid, Martin, to say, just yesterday we lost another one, a ranger, Peter Olara Jonathan. He was shot dead while on patrol in Uganda by armed poachers at the Karanga Community Wildlife Area. I'm told that Prince William has been made aware of that particular case yesterday, and clearly, as I said, it's an incredibly dangerous game that these rangers are playing, trying to tackle the illegal wildlife trade. And this is coinciding with Prince William being here to host his annual environmental Earthshot Prize, trying to find solutions to repair the planet within a decade. And it's all about scaling up these small scale solutions, but scaling them up at speed so they can actually have a global impact. And Prince William has been talking at length about that over the last couple of weeks. I was with him earlier this morning. He was on a hike in the national park just behind me, the Table Mountain National Park, an area of outstanding national beauty, really, but it's incredibly biodiverse. And I spoke to some of the rangers there who are protecting some of the rare plants and animals which are inside that national park. He was meeting with the next generation of conservationists, including Robert Irwin, who I interviewed yesterday. You can watch that full interview on GB News. He also, on the GB News YouTube channel, I should say, and he was speaking to some local volunteers right here in South Africa, but young volunteers, to try and encourage them and see if the work they're doing to conserve the environments for future generations. We are expecting Prince William to be delivering a landmark speech in the next couple of minutes, and he is perhaps expected to announce some support or further support for park rangers right across Africa and indeed the world who are working to combat the illegal wildlife trade. It's been described by Kensington Palace as a landmark speech on nature, the environment, and his support for rangers. And of course, Prince William comes from a long line of members of the royal family. I believe that, Martin, you have a question for me, sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to know more about the finalists on the Earthshot Prize this year. It's £1 million is up for grabs. I believe there are some Brits on the shortlist. Tell us more about who could win that £1 million.
Yeah, so 5 categories, Martin. So it's actually 5 £1 million prize money up for grabs. There's 5 categories, everything from protecting our oceans, or cleaning up our oceans, cleaning our air, and preserving the environment for future generations. And it's these small-scale companies from right across the world. They're nominated by those involved with the Earthshots, and there's 15 finalists each year. So there's 15 finalists this year, and then 5 obviously win that prize money. But it's not just about this week and winning the prize money. What the Earthshot does, and what Prince William works quite hard behind the scenes on, is matching up these small companies with big corporations such as, I don't know, Uber or British Airways, these big companies we've heard about, and matching those small companies with these big corporations to then those corporations can invest money in them. I'll give you an example, because Prince William was talking about this earlier today at the Earthshot Plus summit. Enso, which is a British company based in London, it's created more sustainable tyres, kind of road tyres, which instead of shredding off bits of rubber, which obviously pollutes the air and ends up in rivers and in our oceans, they're far more durable and will last a lot longer. And they've actually partnered now with Uber, thanks to Prince William and the Earthshot Prize matching them together, and that's being rolled out in Uber cars right across the world, or wherever Uber operates. So that's one way that the environment's being cleaned up. British Airways is in talks with Notpla, which is another British company. It seems to be a lot of best of British companies here, Martin, who's found a way to replicate the way that that plastic works, but using seaweed instead for food packaging containers. So British Airways will have food packaging containers made out of seaweed rather than plastic. So it's those kind of initiatives which can work. And also sustainable aviation fuel is another company started or being funded or supported by the Earthshot Prize, again in talks with British Airways to have more sustainable aviation fuel. So urgent optimism is how Prince William is describing this. He wants it to be positive because a lot of people, as we talk about, turn off when we talk about the climate because it's lots of doom and gloom and scaremongering, which we don't really want to talk about. But it's all about looking towards the future and being optimistic.
And Cameron, as we await Prince William to Hove interview, another one that's caught my eye here on the list of Earthshot potential winners, a UK-based team, a company called MyAlgae. They developed a patented fermentation process to grow omega-3 rich algae, ending our reliance on wild fishing. I've got to say, Cameron, it might be a worthy initiative. It doesn't sound particularly appetising.
Martin, I'm afraid I only caught the very end of that question because I think there was a button held down in the gallery which meant I couldn't hear you. So do you mind just repeating yourself? Sorry.
Yeah, just saying, one of the things that caught my eye, there's a UK-based team behind a company called MyAlgae. And they've developed a patented fermentation process to grow omega-3 rich algae, which will end our reliance on wild fishing. I've got to say, it might be a noble pursuit. Doesn't sound very appealing.
It doesn't sound very appealing. That company based in Scotland, I was speaking to them a few days ago at this Earthshot retreat just outside of Cape Town at a lovely vineyard, but they actually use the byproducts of whiskey, which is obviously a great British export, particularly in Scotland, to create that omega-3 to then feed the wild fish. So, you know, it's all these little innovations, isn't it, that seem to be potentially having a big impact. But it is, I mean, I'm talking about it very optimistically. Clearly, it's a huge, huge challenge, and it's going to take a lot of work, and it's clearly not just Prince William alone who is going to be able to do this. But I think what he does have is the power to bring people around the table who could potentially make a difference or match make these companies with these small scale solutions. It was described, he's got this launch pad which is described as a bit of like a dating app, but for companies and innovators to work together, matching the finance, the big finance, with these small scale solutions to then scale them up for the future. So yes, it's a lot of work. Prince William obviously also has been a bit of a statesman because David Lammy, Foreign Secretary, has been here in South Africa. He's had a meeting with the President, a high-level meeting with the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, alongside Prince William, shoring up the bilateral relationship between Britain and South Africa. Clearly, they've been talking about the environment, but other issues as well. And so it's showing us really the fact that David Lammy's here and Prince William is here as well, talking to Cyril Ramaphosa, that the royal family, and particularly Prince William, is still seen as an asset by this new Labour government that has come in. And this meeting was seen as a follow-up to the 2022 state visit, which was the first state visit that King Charles hosted in London back in November 2022. He'd only been king for a couple of months, and that state visit appeared to have gone very well, which is why we've got this follow-up meeting with Prince William and the South African president this afternoon.
OK, thank you very much there, Cameron Walker, live from Cape Town. We'll come back to you shortly. There's loads more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, including when he turns up, Prince William speaking live from South Africa.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
3 incredible young people from Essex are planning to become the youngest people ever to row, not sail, row, across the Atlantic Ocean.
It's about for 3,000 miles.
It is.
Give or take.
Almost exactly that, Sam.
The 3 flying fish, so-called, consists of Anna, Dunk, Harry, Alan and Rowan Daly, who are preparing to row that 3,000 miles across the Atlantic. It would be the second largest ocean in the world. And the trio are aiming to do that challenge in support of the Teenage Cancer Trust.
Well, I'm very pleased to say that Anna and Harry from the Flying Fish join us now. Very good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
I think the two of you are bonkers, but brilliant. Absolutely incredible what you're doing to raise money for Teenage Cancer Trust. Why did you want to do this?
So our third person, Rowan, his friend actually died. So when he was in secondary school, I believe, one of his peers passed away, and Teenage Cancer supported them and their family a lot. So it was definitely the right charity. Yeah, it was.
Absolutely awful. So you wanted to do something to raise money for teenage cancer. Why rowing?
So my dad did it in 2021.
The trip, the Atlantic trip?
Yeah, he rowed it as a pair. Where we live in Essex, they actually build the boats there. So we used to cycle round there past the boatyard, and he got interested and actually did it. He was the first year after COVID. And one night, we all met in the Air Cadets, so one night after Air Cadets, Rowan actually dropped me off home and the boat was outside. We were obviously waiting to get it sold. And I think he was asking some questions, and we stood there at my porch and went, Rowan said, I reckon we could do that. And I was like, yeah, I reckon we could. And then we brought Harry on board, and that's kind of how it all came together.
If people are watching and they want to support you, do you have a
Yeah, we've
GoFundMe
got
page
social
yet?
media platforms at
Right.
the Free Flying Fish. That's Facebook, Instagram and TikTok, and our GoFundMe links in all of the bios on there.
Fantastic.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:46. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, swearing at work is more common in the north, says a judge who ruled a worker's dismissal too harsh, despite him aiming expletives at a work colleague. Now, the delivery driver in question was sacked after making offensive comments about a co-worker, but the judge's comments have raised the wider question. Should professional profanity be accepted in the workplace? Well, we're joined now by the language, linguistics and communications expert, Dr. Alex Beretta. But ahead of that, I've got a few thoughts on this. And I think swearing can be an art form. I think it can be a wonderful thing, particularly if you work on a building site or if you're a tradesman. I think swearing can be elevated to the form of art. Let's see if Dr. Alex Beretta agrees with me now. Alex, welcome to the show. What do you think about swearing at work? Does it still have a place, or is it firmly belonging in the past?
Well, I think it has a place because we can't tell people what to say at work, by and large. We can make rules for what kind of language is or is not acceptable, or put them into laws, such as, you can't use racist language or sexist language, or you can, but then there's consequences. But if we're using swear words or taboo...
I'm really, really sorry. I'm afraid we have to interrupt you. I won't use any foul language because we have to cross to West Palm Beach in Florida, where Donald Trump has arrived to cast his vote. He's casting his vote live as we speak there in Florida.
It's crazy. They use these very expensive computers, and I'm hearing in Pennsylvania they won't have an answer till 2 or 3 days from now. I think it's an absolute outrage if that's the case. Now, maybe it'll be later, but it's paper ballots in France. They went paper ballots because the mail-in was not working. It was corrupt. And in France, they went paper ballots. And at 10 o'clock in the evening, they had 37 million votes counted and done. They had a winner, they had a loser. And in this country, I'm just hearing that in certain states, it's going to be a long time, and it won't even be close. It won't even be that close. They say, I'm going to win the state, but it's going to take a long time to certify it.
Could you see a world where you don't declare victory tonight?
Yeah, I'm hearing the same things that you're hearing. I'm hearing states where I'm up by a lot, but they won't have a final number for a long time.
What are your plans for tonight in terms of watching the results and so forth?
So we're going to have a very special group of people, many of whom you know, and they'll be at Mar-a-Lago. In addition, we'll have 4,000 or 5,000 people at the convention center. On the assumption I win, I don't know if something else happens. I don't know what's going to happen in terms of declaring victory, but if in normal times I would go over to the convention center, let's say at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock or something, but I just don't know. It looks like we have a very substantial lead. It looks like we have many more Republicans voting today than Democrats. So if you have a lead and we have a bigger vote, that means you're doing very well. But they have to call a winner. They should. And they should call a winner, yes. Just stop talking about that. Go ahead. Oh, I don't know. I was honored to get Joe Rogan last night. I mean, Joe Rogan's a big deal. He's a very respected person. And I must tell you, Megyn was fantastic. She got up and said some things that were really pretty amazing. But before that, I just think we ran a good campaign. I had good policy. We want people to come into our country, but they have to come in legally. You know, we want strong borders, and we want people to come in. We want to be totally inclusive, but they have to come in. I think that was a big issue. To me, that was the biggest issue. I may be wrong. You know, a lot of people said inflation. Inflation's a disaster, but I think it's a second issue. I think the first is the border. We can't allow criminals to be put back into our country or to be put into our country. So you have 13,000 plus murderers allowed to roam in our country. Not going to be allowed. They have to go. You have drug dealers. You have terrorists. You have a tremendous amount of people that should not be in our country, and we need strong borders in this country. And I think people are voting. And I think it's personally, I think it's the number one issue. We'll see how it pans out, but I think it's the number one issue. I don't have to tell them that. I don't have to tell them that there'll be no violence. Of course there'll be no violence. My supporters are not violent people. I don't have to tell them that. And I certainly don't want any violence, but I certainly don't have to tell. These are great people. These are people that believe in no violence. Unlike your question, you believe in violence. Go ahead.
Where will you be looking early to see if you're having a good night or not? What's your goal?
Well, I think I'll be at Mar-a-Lago for the most part. We have a lot of political professionals. I'm going over now with Melania, who I'm very proud of. She's got the #1 bestseller. Can you believe that? He can believe it. But so we're very proud of the job she's done with that. Her book is #1. But we're going to go over to the office in West Palm, and we're going to say hello to the workers. They've worked very hard.
Will Georgia kind of be your first indication of whether it's going to be a good
I think so. I mean, I hear we're doing very well there in Georgia. I hear we're doing very well. I hear we're doing very well everywhere. Now, I may regret that statement, but I'm hearing that we're doing very well everywhere. Would you go louder? No, I haven't prepared a speech. No, I did speeches last night, all day long, all night long. At 2 o'clock in the morning, we left, and we did a lot of speeches. You can probably tell. No, I don't have to do that. You know, I'm not a Democrat. I'm able to make a speech on pretty quick notice. If I win, I know what I'm going to say, and I don't even want to think about the losing part. I would like to tell all of the people that are online to stay online. We have tremendous Republican lines, and I've been asked actually to say it. It takes a while. I'd like to just make the statement that I'd like the Republicans to stay online. Democrats, if they'd like, they can leave. But I'd like the Republicans to stay online.
Any additional pressure today, given criminal cases against you that would proceed if you lost or go away?
I have no pressure whatsoever. I'm winning big cases. Those cases are all being won. The biggest case was the Florida case, and it's been won. I appreciate your nice question.
Sir, you and Mrs. Trump have been doing
No
this
pressure whatsoever.
for 9 years. Regardless of what happens tonight, is this your last campaign? Are you done after this?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I would think so.
How do you feel about that?
Sad, and very fulfilled. I think we're going to have a very big victory today.
Mrs. Trump, how are you feeling?
Very good, thank you. Thank you.
Sir, if you win, do you have a plan in place to start naming staff and cabinet
Yeah,
officers?
we're already a transition team. But I don't like talking about that until I find out how we do. I mean,
how does this sort of threat from Iran and sort of assassinating attempts sort of shape your thinking on stuff, right?
well, it doesn't. Look, we're not looking to do damage to Iran, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. That's my terms are very easy. They can't have a nuclear weapon. I'd like them to be a very successful country, but they just can't have a nuclear weapon.
Does it change the way you live? All the threats?
Well, I think Secret Service has been a little bit tougher, to put it mildly. I see more machine guns than I've ever seen in my life. We're surrounded by, I feel very confident with Secret Service. I think they've stepped up. Look, for a long time, they didn't give us the help. They didn't give us the assets, as they say, the manpower, woman power. They didn't give it to us. And we'd have rallies. You saw the rallies, 50, 60,000 people. And I'd have less people than Joe Biden, who had 5 people show up. And I'd have 55,000 people show up, and I had fewer people than him. So they should have done a much better job. And frankly, the president should make a very strong statement to the outside world, because
How are you feeling about your team as we head into the last day?
I think my team is incredible. Look, they say it's the best run campaign they've seen. Some people said it's the best run campaign they've ever seen. But in order to make that stick, you have to win.
How do you feel compared to your past campaigns? Are you more confident now than you were about your team than you were in the last 2 races?
My team, I'm very confident in. Many of them are the same players. As you know, Susie, a lot of the people are the same players. They've been very good.
Mr. President, Oprah said at Harris's rally last night, quote, "If we don't show up tomorrow, it is entirely possible we won't be able to count the ballot."
Well, I think it's ridiculous. You know, Oprah, I was on her last show, or one of her last shows, and they picked the biggest people and all of that, and made a big deal. And I'm disappointed. I think Oprah's become a major divider in our country. And I think, frankly, she should be ashamed of herself. And you know who else should be ashamed? Fox. Because I've seen Oprah on Fox about 50 times making the same statement. And I think it's a disgrace what Fox does, because everyone thinks Fox is so pro-Trump. They're not pro-Trump at all. They've put Oprah on all morning long. That's all I see is Oprah. And, I knew Oprah very well. She's been at Mar-a-Lago many times. Roger King had his funeral. That's the head of King World, which was Oprah's mentor. And Oprah chose the location. She said, Mar-a-Lago is the most beautiful place. Would it be possible to have Roger's funeral at Mar-a-Lago in the ballroom? We did it. The only time I've ever had a funeral there. And I think Oprah should be ashamed of herself to say that. She should be ashamed. She knows me. She wanted to run with me as the vice president. She was going to be the vice president. She wrote me a letter. It's in the book. And now she goes and makes statements like that. She's a divider. And Barack Hussein Obama is a divider, too.
There are people who are concerned that you didn't concede the election in 2020 when you lost. They're concerned that if you lost this election, you wouldn't concede again. What do you say to those people?
I think they're crazy. If I lose an election, if it's a fair election, I'd be the first one to acknowledge it. And I think so far, I think it's been fair. I think there's been a lot of court cases. Both sides are lawyered up. Thousands of lawyers are involved, thousands, can you imagine? And part of that is because we have too complicated a process. If we had a piece of paper, watermarked, you know that paper is more sophisticated now than computers. It's watermarked paper. It's unbelievable what happens with it. There's nothing you can do to cheat. And it costs you practically nothing to run. Think of it. We spend hundreds of millions and billions of dollars on these campaigns. You could do it for 8% of the cost and have accuracy, and we wouldn't have to be worried about when is Pennsylvania going to announce. It's really a shame.
Last question.
Well, he knows exactly what, but that's only based on what RFK told us. I don't think RFK wanted that. You're talking about Health and Human Services. Let me tell you, he's a great guy, RFK, and he's going to do pretty much what he wants as far as I'm concerned. He wants health for women, for men, for children, and I happen to agree with a lot of the things he says. The one thing I told him, and I've told you in speeches for the last 2 weeks, we got to keep them away from the liquid gold, because the liquid gold, we have more than any of it. It's called oil and gas. That one I'm going to handle.
But in your cabinet, would you
Well, I'd be honored to have him. Now, I haven't spoken to Howard about that, but look, if you think of it, he came in third, in running for president, right? He ran a very good race. He had obstacles. The Democrats just really unfairly put obstacles up, and hence Kennedy left the Democrat Party for the Republicans. Now, he's a very smart guy. He's a very caring guy. He's very popular, too. We get up and introduce him. The place goes wild. No, we love having him. And you know who else we love having? Elon. He's been great. And everybody, look, everybody. Getting Joe Rogan last night and Megyn Kelly, this is very inclusive. This is a movement. This is the greatest political movement in the history of our country. And even you people, and some of you are fair sometimes, but it's the greatest movement in the history of our country. And I've made that statement 1,000 times. It has never been challenged. It is the greatest movement, and we're going to make America great again. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. Nice to see you.
And that was Donald Trump there with his wife Melania casting his vote in this historic election in Palm Beach, Florida. In an expansive statement there to the press, he said he had a sore throat from so much speaking. He was initially very hostile about the election process, lambasting the fact it may take 2 or 3 days before we know a result. And joining me now to go through this and to discuss it is GBNews' US correspondent Steve Edgington. Steve, welcome to the show. Donald Trump there wasting no time, saying he felt it's an absolute disgrace that in France they can handle 37 million paper ballots and have those votes done on the same night. He talked about that being the same across the world, yet in America their system is so laboriously slow.
That's right. There is going to be a chance that this election won't be decided today. And the reason for that is that many of these states all have different rules on counting the votes. So somewhere like Pennsylvania, it might take days, maybe even more than a week to find out the actual end result. However, that's only if the race goes down to the wire. And many people believe that this won't be a particularly tight race in terms of the Electoral College. Donald Trump, I think, has a good chance of winning maybe even all 7 swing states in this election. It looks like the opinion polls are heading in his way. They're doing far much better than in 2020 and in 2016 for Donald Trump. So there is, of course, a chance that we'll be talking about this election, deciding who's going to be the president. We're not going to know for at least a few days, maybe even longer than that. But I think there is also a very, very good chance that by, tonight, early tomorrow morning, we will have a very good sense of who has won. And this election has been interesting. The polls have been very, very tight. In 2020, Biden was ahead by a significant margin, around 7 points in the national opinion polls. Now it's basically a dead heat with Donald Trump leading in some of the polls. In 2016, Hillary Clinton was ahead by about 3 points in the national polls. She ended up winning by 2 points in the national vote, but of course losing the Electoral College. So I think that Donald Trump is going into this election very buoyant. I think his team are confident. And on the Democratic side, they are worried, particularly about the early voting data we've seen in Pennsylvania, the key swing state in this election. The Democrat turnout is down by hundreds of thousands of votes from 2020. So all the signs are looking like it's good for Donald Trump.
And in fact, Steve Edgington, he was just saying there, I'm hearing of states where I'm up by a lot, but then again, lambasting the fact we might not know for days. He said it looks like we have a very substantial lead in some of those states. He talked about how he was honoured to be endorsed by Joe Rogan. He was very complimentary about their campaign. He said he thought borders was the single biggest issue, with inflation coming second. He thinks maybe the Democrats got that spectacularly wrong there. And then he had an extraordinary attack on Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey, he really steamed into her, Steve Edgington.
Well, she spoke at Kamala Harris's rally last night, one of her final rallies, I think the final rally of the campaign. Kamala Harris spent her entire day in Pennsylvania yesterday, again, that key swing state in this election. that is not a sign of confidence. That is a sign the Democrats are very worried about losing that key state. And if they do lose it, there's a very good chance Donald Trump will become the 47th president. Of course, Trump had his own rally last night, his final rally, and that featured Megyn Kelly, someone who he's had a very interesting history with. She used to be a Fox News presenter. She asked a very tough question back in 2016 when he was running to be the Republican candidate. And he famously criticized her in a very brash way. And now she's one of his biggest supporters. So Trump is really trying to rely on female voters. He needs to persuade them to vote for him this time. That is the Democrats' secret weapon. It's those female Republican moderate voters that the Democrats think they are winning over, because Donald Trump, frankly, puts off those voters. And also the issue of abortion is driving Democratic voters. It drove them in the 2022 midterm elections. And it looks like this is their major issue of this campaign, what they call women's rights, women's reproductive rights. This is what Kamala Harris and the Democrats have been talking about the entire election campaign. So this is the major issue for them. Obviously, you mentioned for Donald Trump, it's all about immigration and inflation and the economy. The economy has been struggling over the last 4 years, particularly with inflation. Prices of food and petrol have gone up significantly in the United States. And a lot of people are feeling that in their pockets. So Donald Trump is trying to tell people, look, when I was president, the economy was doing well. We had COVID, but before that, the economy was booming. Now, under Biden and Harris, the economy has been really struggling. So these are the major issues that both candidates have been talking about. And when it comes to celebrity endorsements, both sides have had their big endorsements. You've had, on the Democratic side, Taylor Swift, Oprah Winfrey. On the Republican side, as you say, Joe Rogan last night, the famous podcaster, he came out for Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Megyn Kelly. They've had these other celebrities. So it's an interesting battle of celebrities today.
And Oprah Winfrey referred to voting for Donald Trump will place America, as she said, on a precipice of danger. And you mentioned there Fox News in that speech a short while ago there in Palm Beach, Florida. Donald Trump was turning his guns on Fox News for repeating that comment by Oprah Winfrey. He said 50 times this morning already, there's a feeling Fox News used to be a Trump supporter, now very, very against him. And Donald Trump saving some hostility even in that press conference there by saying to one of the reporters, I don't need to tell my supporters not to be violent. They are not violent people. Unlike you, you believe in violence, all the way to the wire, Steve Edgington, accusing the media of being hostile and trying to whip up a frenzy against him.
Well, I live in Washington, D.C., and if you walk around Washington, D.C. today, many, many shops are boarding up their shop windows. They're terrified there is going to be violence and riots. And I can tell you, the reason they're doing that is not because they're scared of Kamala Harris winning and there being these Donald Trump riots. They are worried that if Donald Trump wins, the left will come out and riot. And they have done that in the past. We've seen that with BLM. We've seen that with Antifa. Now, of course, it's worth mentioning on January the 6th, 2021, there was a riot of Republicans in the Capitol, and that wasn't good. I know that many people condemned that violence at the time. Donald Trump, some people criticized him, saying that he spurred it on, but of course he also emphasizes that he asked for peaceful protests. So both sides have participated in, rioting and violence, and I think America is holding its breath. Whatever the outcome, people are very concerned that there could be looting, violence, riots, and, peaceful protests acceptable, but I think it could go towards the more violent end of things. And people in DC are very, very worried.
OK, Steve Edgington there for GB News, our US correspondent from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much. And, of course, we'll cross back to you live throughout the rest of this evening. Let's continue this conversation now. I'm joined by the Democrats' political strategist, Hank Scheinkoff. Hank, welcome to the show. I don't know how much of that there you overheard. Donald Trump's claiming to have a substantial lead. The early voting looks pretty good for the Republicans. The poll of polls out last night has Trump ahead in all 7 of those swing states, yet other people saying it could be as close as the flipping of a coin. What's your understanding of the latest situation, Hank?
Looking at polls this morning, it is a very close race. Could it go in either way? Yes, the answer is yes, it can.
And what do you make of Donald Trump's statement there that he felt the number one issue that voters have responded to has been the border, and more to the point, its porosity? He mentioned yesterday in North Carolina his claim 21 million people have come over that border illegally. Kamala Harris, Democrats, many held responsible for that situation. They're instead trying to keep the conversation onto abortion. Will that be enough to gel with more voters? Abortion
is a very serious issue. Reproductive rights, very serious. The question here is, does the migrant problem overcome that? And in some portions of the United States, it absolutely will, unquestionably so. People are afraid. They don't understand why the people are coming across the border in such numbers, why it can't be controlled. They're worried about their jobs, their safety, and frankly, their futures.
Do you think there's an element of people just want change? We had a big political change this side of the pond, Hank. The Conservative Party had been in power for 14 years. The Labour Party was voted in. Hey, it's hardly been a picnic in many people's opinions since that. But there is fatigue, there is wear out. And throughout the campaign, it's been characterised by Kamala Harris saying, Trump was chaos. But a lot of people are saying, well, you're in power. Joe Biden was in power. Democrats are in power. Inflation is up, prices are up. Has it been enough just to continually attack Donald Trump, once again comparing him to Adolf Hitler, calling him a fascist?
Not sufficient, certainly. Calling him a Hitler is ridiculous. The use of the word Nazi is frankly a slur to the people of the UK and the United States, considering the prices paid to get the Nazis out of Europe and to win that war 80 years ago. That being said, it's not sufficient. And the Harris campaign really didn't take off in any way until the last several weeks. Donald Trump's constituency is gelled. And the issue here is, how much do people feel more strongly about Trump and protecting that border? Or do they feel, and their prices, or do they feel that Harris and the new future, which is what she's talking about, is the way to go?
And do you think there's something in that? Because, a reporter just asked Donald Trump there about losing. He said, listen, I don't want to talk about losing. But they did say, if you don't win, will you be done after this? And he said, I would think so, yes. But I think we're going to have a very big win. But it seems to be, Hank, he's getting on a bit. He just admitted himself there. If he doesn't win, this is it. So everything is at stake for Donald Trump. This is a must-win election for him.
This is a must-win election for him. But the movement he created, this form of extreme populism where Americans of a particular group are rising up. Americans are figuring out now that more than 50% of the population of the country cannot trace its roots any longer to Europe. It's a country that was once the most religious in the world. It's not that way anymore. That America is the America Donald Trump and his, frankly, supporters are saying they don't want, and that movement will continue.
And that maybe it will continue, Hank, because of the open nature of that border. We've seen a huge amount of crime. Donald Trump talking there about 13,000 murderers that have come into the country. It might be rhetoric, it might be hyperbole, but he does talk about how Caracas, Venezuela, now safe because the worst criminals from those countries are in America, and people are taking notice of that. People notice communities changing and not necessarily for the worse. And it hasn't been enough, has it, for the Democrats to say, we should be inclusive, we should be welcoming of all cultures. Doesn't work when things go wrong.
It's not working. People don't believe it. And frankly, they're afraid. They're afraid economically. They're afraid for their physical safety. And they're afraid of what the future will be like for their children. Whether we can afford to pay for it is the other question. And they believe that part of the reason why we have the economy we do is because of the migrants.
For a political strategist for the Democrat there, Hank, you sound like you're being pretty critical of how the Democrats ran this campaign. Like you're admitting that Donald Trump has good points on the economy, good points on crime, good points on border control. Do you think in that respect, as we're on the final day now, when those ballots are open, Democrats didn't fight a broad enough campaign? They weren't attacking on enough, they weren't offering enough positive policy solutions themselves. It's not enough, is it? Just that I say, hey, this guy, he's terrible. We're not as bad as him. How about offering some optimism, some hope, some policy?
They didn't offer enough policy. They tried to offer hope, and their campaign really gelled very late in the process. And why? Because Harris was the unexpected candidate. Walz was the unexpected vice presidential candidate. Also, remember, people forget that America's history of gender bias and race certainly figures into this. She's a black woman. It's a very difficult moment for Americans to consider. And finally, well, Trump just had the constituency that was much more glued to him and much more driven to be with him than hers was.
Fascinating stuff. Thank you for your excellent insights. Hank Scheikoff, a Democrat political strategist. And of course, those polls are open. We'll be covering that all the way through the night here on GB News. On Bonfire Night, fireworks expected. Now, a change of tone now, and a magnificent story, in my opinion, because two Italian restaurants in Bibington, near Sheffield, have gone above and beyond the call of duty this remembrance. Because check this out, they're giving away free meals to all armed services veterans all of the week. Now, one of those restaurants is called Paolo's and the other is called Seti Cori. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And I'm delighted to say that the co-owners, the father and the son of both restaurants, join me now, Will and Paolo. Welcome to GB News. And let's get you on the screen. And can I first say thank you. Thank you on behalf of so many veterans that have been contacting me directly. He's pointed out to a friend of mine called Daz. He's a former Green Jacket. He just said, this is an amazing initiative. Please tell us what made you come up with the idea.
Well, we've been thinking about it for quite a while, but time goes on, and when it comes to November, it's always a little bit too late. After COVID, I said, I've got to do it, and we done it that year. The response was tremendous, and this is our third year doing it. I'm extremely grateful for the people the veterans and people who are serving at the moment that come in and take advantage of the offer we are giving them. But at the end of the day, I'm the one who've got to say thank you, and I really appreciate them coming in.
It's wonderful, Will, and there have been so many messages of support. I saw on your Facebook page all sorts of regiments from all around the world, not only people who are serving, who are veterans themselves, but people who are currently serving in the armed forces, also friends and family. Universally, this has just been embraced as a wonderful, wonderful idea. I think we've got a couple of pictures of some of the veterans who've been and had some food with you. Tell us about their response when they come through your door. What do they say to you?
Yeah, so we've had quite a few already, even last night, even though the offer for this year just started last night. They all seem really grateful. Obviously, we've took a few photos. We've had ex and current services in, even some with families both serving at the same time. And they all just seem really grateful for it. But really, as my dad said, we should be the ones that are grateful for them.
Let me just tell you that the picture. Let me just tell that picture you saw before is a gentleman. He's 93 years old. He served in the Middle East back in the 90s. He's one of my customers. He comes in regularly. It's a pleasure to have him and listen to his stories. His name is Colin Smith, and he's a great gentleman. I love having him in here.
Now, one thing you might be a bit concerned about here, lads, is now you're on GB News, you might have a queue round the block of veterans queuing up for free food. But I guess, you know, what you've achieved here in recognition, in PR, not that you're doing it, I know you're not doing it for those reasons, you're doing it for genuine, wonderful reasons. And I think it's just an amazing story. Thank you so, so much. But are you a bit concerned you might run out of pizzas and pasta?
There's no way that will happen. You know, I would love to have all this week. I would love to have just full of people who've been in the force or are serving or served before. There's nothing that fills my heart with the pleasure more than that. I'd love to see more and more coming in. And thanks to you, GB News. Let's hope that more people coming in, and maybe next year, let's go again.
Yeah, let's hope that maybe some other establishments, maybe even bigger than ourselves, can do a similar kind of thing. Because 1 week out of the year, it's not a lot to give back for what they gave us. So.
Wonderful stuff. And can you give us a quick idea of the kind of food that armed forces veterans can have to put before them if they turn up to your restaurants? What's on the menu?
Usually it's up to them. We have the menu that includes a starter, a main course, and a drink. But if they want something else off the menu, of course, we'll always say yes. You know, it's our way to say thank you to them. And I have served before in my own country. My brother served, my two other brothers served, and I'm extremely grateful for people coming in. And let's have the more, the merrier.
And Will, let's give the final word to you. What would you like to say to all those people that have given so many wonderful, supportive messages on your social medias?
Well, just thank you. Obviously, we've been doing it this is the 3rd year, so this year it's finally got a bit more recognition, but that's not what we're doing for, really. The more recognition, the more people that come in, and that's what we want. So hopefully we've got a few more photos to share and a few people coming in so that they can enjoy themselves and have a nice night when they come to visit us.
Well, it's an absolutely wonderful story. Thank you so much in many ways for restoring faith in humanity. And I think my friend Michael Portillo would like to have you on his show on Sunday, on Remembrance Sunday itself, if that's possible, to check in with you again, to try and get some more stories, some more photographs throughout the week. Thank you so much there to Will and Paolo. That's the owners, the team there behind Paolo's and Seti Colli in Bibbington there near Sheffield. Top work, gentlemen. Absolute legends. Thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well, now it's time for the Great British Giveaway. How would you like to win your entire Christmas this year? I know that I would. Well, we're giving you the chance to do just that with the very latest Great British Giveaway. It's a festive bumper edition. Here's the details that you need to enter. Guess the kid now. Stay with me because a woman has visited Downing Street to deliver a million-strong petition calling for tighter regulations on fireworks. She joins me next for a banger of a story. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
It seems that the younger generation's interest in literature is waning. Academics argue that educational policies have failed to encourage reading for pleasure, contributing to declining numbers of English literature students and a shift towards young adult books rather than classic novels. According to 2023 figures from the National Literacy Trust, the number of 8 to 18-year-olds who say they enjoy reading has sunk to its lowest level for almost 20 years, with a quarter fewer reading each day over that same time period. To share more with us about this topic, I'm joined now by the journalist Charlotte Lytton. Charlotte, welcome back. Lovely to talk to you again. Tell us your perspective on this issue. What is happening?
Well, speaking to academics, we can't deny, it seems, that there is a big problem here, and it starts right at school. As you read there, young children simply don't enjoy reading for pleasure as they did before. We can't deny that is also a massive part because of smartphones, because kids now are faced with all of these things vying for their attention. They just don't have to sit down and entertain themselves with a long book and nothing else as they did before. As we see from those figures with people going to study humanities at university, the decline is just going all the way because people simply are not interested in reading for pleasure as they were.
Do you get any feeling that education policy or that teachers are taking steps to counter this?
Well, there is a review of the curriculum going ahead right now, but school is a huge part of it. One of the things that has come up in this conversation is whether teachers now are dealing with crowd control, which means they can't simply encourage reading for pleasure because they're simply trying to get a hold of the students they have.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:25. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, Julie Dawn from Grantham has visited today Downing Street to deliver a million-strong petition calling for tighter regulations on fireworks. She wants to restrict them only to traditional festivals, including tonight's Bonfire Night, because of their impact on vulnerable people and, of course, animals. And well, joining me now is the campaign manager at the firework campaign, Julie Dawn, and also in the studio is Duncan McNair. Pronounce your surname?
McNair.
McNair, the CEO of Save the Asian Elephants, and you have a particular interest, of course, in making sure we protect animals. Let's start with you. I understand this has been going on now for a number of years. You've been gathering this. 1 million people. That's no short position. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so it's 1 million and I think it was 1,070,000 at the last count.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been doing this since 2013, but the petition has been going 6 years. It takes us that long to get to that many people. That's the issue with petitions, is that you've got to get to the people who want to sign it. And this sort of thing will help us get to the people who want to sign it.
And to be absolutely clear, you're not like being a killjoy and saying ban fireworks outright. No, that does happen. You're saying try and stick to the allotted night so everybody knows where they stand. And that way we can all have fun without causing distress.
Yeah, displays, big firework displays are different because everybody's going to know when they are because they're advertised. But back garden fireworks should be, we think, restricted or controlled and kept to, the original dates, which is Guy Fawkes, New Year's Eve, Diwali and Chinese New Year.
Yeah, so they're the three big ones. And four big ones. And how many days around them do you think is acceptable for people to fire off fireworks?
Well, it always used to be. It used to be if Guy Fawkes was in the middle of the week, it used to be the weekend before and the weekend after.
Yeah.
And that's acceptable. You can plan for that sort of thing. You can expect it. It's the ones that you can't expect that are the issue.
And it's not just animals, of course. We've had on the show before former servicemen who are triggered by explosions, because, of course, it can remind them of combat. Tell us a few of the stories that people have been telling you about why they're traumatised by fireworks going off.
OK, so one of the big ones that I remember is that a lady went home from work and found her husband in a diabetic coma.
Right.
And the assistant's dog was in the corner cowering because somebody had fireworks and they hadn't told the lady they were going to have fireworks. So she went to work thinking everything was going to be fine and her husband could have died.
Okay, and Duncan, tell us specifically about you're a legal expert. Do you think there needs to be a specific law drafted around the use of fireworks and animals?
Yes, I mean, there are laws, and there are plenty of them, and the key consolidating law is the Animal Welfare Act of 2006. That is hopelessly out of date for this purpose, as are the subsequent regulations, the so-called explosives regulation, slightly alarmingly. I wanted to just make it clear, these fireworks today did not exist a generation ago, and less than that. They're effectively like bombs. They hit enormous volumes, up to 175 decibels and beyond. A jet fighter taking off is less than that, 140. And anything over 85 decibels can damage human ears, and a lot less can damage animals who have extremely sensitive hearing. And this is a reckless market where the unscrupulous are flourishing. All those animals that suffering, as well as humans, as well as vulnerable humans with heart conditions and so on, and children who go unprotected with their ears and so on, encouraged by schools. But horses, 49 horses have died since 2010 as a direct result of bolting in the face of fear and stress from these noises. Birds, squirrels, frogs, fish and many others. My home in West London gives way to a large school that has a menagerie of many different animals. They have enormous firework displays several times a year with no concessions for the extreme noise. What we need is a proper law that is clear, not a mesh of muddled regulations, and enforcement, the compulsion of law and proper enforcement. That's not happening either.
OK, Julie, I've got to confess, I just got a message from my daughter saying, Daddy, can we have some fireworks tonight in the garden? Now I'm feeling dreadfully guilty. I've got a cat. He normally, he just hides in a corner and we give him a bag of treats and he's all right. Am I doing the wrong thing by having a firework display in my garden?
No, it's to be expected. It's the time of year, it's to be expected. We wouldn't, there's There's no reason to stop them at this time of year. It's something like, I don't know, if it happens in June and you're not expecting it. But the government have got a device out there, but it's just not working. They advise that you don't set off fireworks close to horses, but nobody tells you what close is.
Yeah.
We've been in touch with DEFRA and nobody will tell us what close is. So you say to somebody, please don't let those fireworks off, they're too close to my horse, and they say, I can, because it's legal.
And you gave your position in today at Downing Street around about 3 o'clock. How was it received?
Well, you know, they came to the door and they took the box, I don't know. I asked the lady to put it on his desk first thing in the morning and give him a nudge to look at it, but who knows?
Well, a lot of people certainly think that the Prime Minister certainly deserves a rocket up his you-know-what, but that would be impolite to say. Do you hope to get a new law passed?
They need to look at it. They need to look at reforming firework law because it's the law after use is not working. So it needs looking at.
Well, a great endeavour, many years in the making. Well done on delivering it. Thank you both for coming into the studio. That's Judy Dawn and Duncan McNair, the CEO of Save the Asian Elephants. And, of course, that's the campaign at the Firework Campaign. Great work. Thank you for joining me here in the studio, and a happy bonfire night. Now, lots more still to come, of course, between now and 6 o'clock, including the latest as Prince William finally speaks in South Africa on the importance of protecting the environment. But first is your latest news headlines, and it's Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. It's 5:31. These are your headlines from the GB Newsroom. Your top story this hour. Voting is underway in all states across the US as the country decides their 47th president in what is being described as a historically close race. Donald Trump has arrived to vote in Palm Beach near his home alongside his wife Melania. The former president spoke to media saying, "I hear we're doing very well."
I feel very confident. I have felt, we went in with a very big lead today. And it looks like Republicans have shown up in force. I don't have to tell them that there'll be no violence. Of course there'll be no violence. My supporters are not violent people. I don't have to tell them that. And I certainly don't want any violence, but I certainly don't have to tell. These are great people. These are people that believe in no violence.
Meanwhile, Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance has also cast his vote. Speaking outside the polling station, Trump's running mate said, "We do expect to win." Meanwhile, Joe Biden has called on voters to make history by electing Kamala Harris as his successor as he prepared for a quiet election day at the White House. As well as choosing who will be the next resident of the White House, Americans will also be electing 435 members of the House of Representatives, 34 Senate seats and 11 state governors. The first result has come in from the small town of Dixville Notch in New Hampshire, where Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have tied with 3 votes each. Back at home now, Kemi Badenoch has held her first shadow cabinet meeting today, saying she will win back the trust of the public with a team effort as she released her full shadow cabinet this morning. Chris Philp has been announced as Shadow Home Secretary, while Jessie Norman has been appointed Shadow Leader of the House. Notably, there is no role for Tom Tugendhat, who was a contender in the leadership race. Other appointments include Badenoch's former rival, Robert Jenrick, as Shadow Justice Secretary, Mel Stride as the new Shadow Chancellor, and Priti Patel as Shadow Foreign Secretary. In other news, the Queen is unwell with a chest infection and has had to withdraw from her engagements this week. Buckingham Palace released a statement saying Her Majesty the Queen is currently unwell with a chest infection, for which doctors have advised a short period of rest. With great regret, Her Majesty has therefore had to withdraw from her engagements this week, but she very much hopes to be recovered in time to attend the weekend's remembrance events as normal. She apologises to all those who may be inconvenienced or disappointed as a result. Sir Keir Starmer posted on X saying, "On behalf of the whole country, I wish Her Majesty the Queen a speedy recovery." The Duchess of Gloucester has stepped in on the Queen's behalf to attend the annual opening of the Field of Remembrance at Westminster Abbey on Thursday. Sir Alan Bates is giving evidence to a parliamentary committee over compensation for victims of the Post Office Horizon scandal. The Post Office campaigner told MPs he has written to Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer twice in the last month, but is still waiting for a response. In his letter, he demanded a March 2025 deadline for compensation for sub-postmaster victims of the Horizon scandal, reminding the Prime Minister that the clock is still ticking on a financial redress deadline. And planned strikes by London Underground drivers over pay have been suspended. Their union ASLEF said that this has been after significantly improved pay offers. Industrial action was due to begin on Thursday, and a walkout was also planned for next Tuesday. The decision to call it off comes after talks resumed between Transport for London and the trade union. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Afternoon, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. We'll keep a lot of cloud overnight, and tomorrow another fairly grey day, but although there'll be a lot of cloud around, most places will be dry and quite mild. Going to turn quite chilly this evening across northern Scotland. We've got some clearer skies here. Some breaks in the cloud elsewhere could allow some fog to form, and it's not completely dry. We'll see some drizzly rain at times this evening across Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, and a bit more rain just coming into the far northwest as the winds pick up a little this evening here too. But for most, it'll be dry, quite cloudy, and that will keep the temperatures up. A very mild night in the west. In the east, with some clearer skies, we could dip down to single figures, and we could, as I say, see some fog patches which may linger through Wednesday morning's rush hour across parts of northern Scotland. We'll keep the clearer skies. So temperatures here through some sheltered glens may not be too far off freezing, but we should also see some brighter spells coming through. Western Scotland starting pretty drab but very mild. Same goes for Northern Ireland. Lots of cloud here, and say lots of cloud just generally everywhere. Thick cloud across the hills and mountains through England and Wales, and some fog patches across the southeast in particular, which may take most of the day to actually clear. So it's another pretty grey day. Some drizzly rain over southwest Scotland. The rain across northwest Scotland, that should clear. Maybe a few more breaks in the cloud over northern England, North Wales compared to today. Better chance seeing a bit of sunshine. Again, the northeast of Scotland favoured for a bit of blue sky. And where we do see some sunshine, temperatures 15, 16 degrees, even where it's rather glum in the east. 12 or 13, so it is pretty mild. It's a very similar story on Thursday. Again, most places dry, a bit more wind. The wind's actually picking up tomorrow in the west and staying pretty breezy around western coasts on Thursday. Again, northern Scotland just poking out there with some sunshine, seeing temperatures into the mid or even high teens. Elsewhere, most places just dry and cloudy with temperatures 11 to 13 degrees.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Big problems in South Yorkshire heading north up the M1. One lane still closed from junction 35 to 36 towards Barnsley, where a lorry has broken down. There are also restrictions on the entry slip road at junction 35. In West Yorkshire at Guiseley, the A65, the Otley Road is blocked at the scene of an accident causing queues. And on the M6 in the West Midlands, long queues where 2 lanes shut northbound. Just after junction 10, the Wolverhampton-Walsall exit, a lorry has shed its load, queues all the way back to junction 6 near Birmingham. In Gloucestershire, the A419 at Stroud closed following an accident off the Waitrose roundabout. And in Carmarthenshire, the A48 has been closed eastbound off the Cross Hands roundabout. Accident investigation work is taking place. Long queues and the other way back to the bottom end of the M4. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Court cases.
A presidential dropout.
Assassination attempts.
This has been a US election like no other.
And if the polls are correct, it's on a knife edge.
Stay up with us as the drama unfolds and America decides their next president.
We'll discuss what it means for them, for the world, and for our special relationship. America Decides, tonight from 11.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 20 to 6. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, in the last hour, Prince William spoke at an environment summit in Cape Town. Let's speak now to GB News' Raw correspondent, Cameron Walker, who joins me live from Cape Town. Cameron, what did the Prince say?
Hi, Martin. Well, it was the start of his United for Wildlife Global Summit, which aims to tackle the illegal wildlife trade right across the world. It is a huge issue, and Prince William was making the link, really, between the loss of all these endangered species with the illegal wildlife trade. So let's listen to a little snippet of his speech.
Africa is a country of immense natural beauty and remarkable biodiversity. It is also a country that plays a crucial role in the global conservation effort. Unfortunately, the troubling reality that we face is that our planet's natural systems are rapidly approaching an irreversible tipping point, driven by unprecedented nature loss and climate change. Since 1970, we have witnessed a staggering 73% decline in the average size of global wildlife populations. That figure alone highlights the fragility of our ecosystems and the urgency of our mission. The illegal wildlife trade is a key driver of this decline, putting countless species at risk. It is a far-reaching problem that also undermines security and governance worldwide. Beyond its impact on nature, it fuels organised crime, and it often entangled with other illicit activities like drug smuggling, arms trafficking, and human exploitation. The growth of these criminal networks fosters environments where violence against law enforcement and conservationists becomes commonplace. And crucially, this crisis is not confined to any one region. The ripple effects are profound for us all. The overexploitation of nature, catalysed by the illegal wildlife trade, is a major contributor to biodiversity loss. Without nature and healthy ecosystems, there is no guarantee of food security, no guarantee of clean water, and no guarantee of prosperous economy. This is a significant and complex challenge, one that varies across regions but remains deeply interconnected on a global scale.
Now, those who need to tackle these poachers who are killing these animals are park rangers in national parks right across Africa. And Prince William spoke about Anton Mazimba, who was gunned down in front of his children and wife in his own home just a couple of years ago here in South Africa. And today, Prince William announced a package of measures really to support these rangers who are tackling the illegal wildlife trade. A 5-year financial package, including life insurance for family members who are clearly left behind if the worst happens to those rangers, because only 30% of rangers at the moment have access to that any sort of life insurance policies, and clearly it is their livelihoods of families across Africa in this kind of situation. 170 nature protectors in South Africa as well are going to benefit from this. 10,000 rangers are also going to have access to affordable Medivac things in order for them to get help if they do end up in a bad situation. So it's Prince William is basically trying to tackle the illegal wildlife trade, but also trying to get local communities involved, and I suppose trying to make sure that local communities feel that in order to, it's actually more financially beneficial to protect the environment and protect these animals than to kill them.
Cameron Walker, excellent. Thank you very much for that update. From a windswept Cape Town, thank you very much. The Prince finally turned up well worth the wait. Thank you very, very much. Now then, football nuts. Wrexham Football Club got the backing of Hollywood heavyweights Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. Well, get this. Now, Chorley FC have gone one further and have the support of Boyzone and Westlife heartthrobs. Could this be their happily ever after? I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, our next guests have been working closely with celebrities and MPs to help clean up
our planet.
Very important. Think Ocean was founded in 2021 with two main goals. One, educating the next generation to make sure that they know when they're growing up that naturally we have to take care of the planet, and cleaning pollution that's already in the environment.
Well, joining us now to tell us more is Think Ocean's founder, Hugo Valdez-Vera, and the co-founder, Nolene Mariappan. Really good
morning,
to see you both
Hi.
this morning. So, Nolene, let's start with you. What is Think Ocean, and why did you want to start this back in 2021?
Yes, so Hugo had actually been working on the environment and climate action for quite a long time. When he moved to the UK, he realised that there was a growing problem with plastic pollution and that more needed to be done because people weren't actually seeing the link between plastic, the impact on the environment and climate change. So he founded the organisation and I joined him with three goals, really. Education, looking at technology to scale solutions, and looking at how we develop more circular economy programmes. So actually looking at reusing, recycling, actually creating local economies from what people would consider waste.
Hugo, just how bad is plastic pollution around the world, and especially here in the UK?
Well, it is bad, but we don't know the extent of how bad it is. You know, this is not much interest from the bigger players or, some government for us to know every detail of the pollution. So if we know that is from 1 to 10 is 2, probably it's about 6.
Oh.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:47 here on GB News now. Wonderful, heartwarming football story to end the show. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. You know that. Now, the pop band Boyzone have teamed up with Westlife singer Brian McFadden to become shareholders of the semi-professional football club Chorley FC. And with a potential documentary on the way, they believe there is no reason why they can't mirror the major successes of Ryan Reynolds at Wrexham Football Club. And join me now, I'm delighted to say, is the chair of Chorley FC, Mark Oldham. Mark, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure to support smaller clubs. So, do you think that your club, Chorley FC, can get the full Hollywood treatment? Work for Wrexham, why not dare to dream?
I most definitely do. Can I just correct one thing? I'm not the chair of the club. That's a guy called Jamie Vermiglio. I'm the chair of the Supporters Club.
That's it, mate. So back to the story. Do you think after the Hollywood ending that Wrexham Football Club have got, can Chorley FC benefit from a bit of the old celebrity magic dust?
I can't see why not. The guys have been down a few times now, and when they do come down, obviously they're bringing that with them. A little town like Chorley doesn't see much of the charts and big stars, so it's really nice to see them, and we always welcome them when they do come down.
And Mark, give us a flavour of the level of football. I understand you're in the National League North, right? That's 6 rungs down from the top flight. I mean, you're only just down the road from Manchester City, right? But I mean, give us a flavour of the two different worlds between your club and Man City.
Well, I guess the main thing is our players are all part-timers. So we've got kind of fitness coaches, we've got teachers, we've got all kinds of players who have full-time jobs alongside playing. Our average crowd is probably a tenth of what you get at Man City, probably even less than that. We get about 1,500 on a home game. We're always really punching above our own weight in our division. We've been in the playoffs for the last few years. We got promoted during COVID to the National League, but we came straight back down again, unfortunately. And our kind of biggest achievement over the last few years is our 4th round FA Cup run, which happened in 2021, where we beat the likes of Wigan and Peterborough and famously Derby in the 3rd round.
And then enter stage left, as it were, Shane Lynch and Keith Duffy from Boyzone. I think women of a certain vintage may well remember them. There's Shane there, still looking rather handsome, got to say. And Brian McFadden, he's now 44, from Westlife. How did the lads get involved in the club?
So the new owners, we took over about 18 months, 2 years ago, and the new owners are personal friends, I think, with Keith. And obviously, them all being football fans and in love with football, I think they've kind of taken us to the heart. They came down once and they've just kept coming since, and now they've got a share. So, the rest is history, as they say.
I understand there's been a good bit of dosh going into the club, £250,000, and you've got a new pitch, safe for terracing, and your capacity has been upped. And Mark, I've got to ask you, are you suddenly seeing a rapid increase in the number of wives and girlfriends who want to go and see the club in case the lads show up?
There most definitely is. So I was on Saturday with the lads I always go on with, and two of their wives turned up as well, and I've not seen them for about 6 months. So the Westlife and boys were in town, and so were the Wags. So yeah, it's all good stuff. But it gets the gate up, and that's what we want.
Sorry, do you mean you haven't seen your wife and the girlfriends for 6 months after they turned up?
One on the football, definitely not.
But on a serious point, look, I'm a Nottingham Forest fan. We've been struggling for a long time. We're doing well now. Small clubs are the bread and butter. This is the stuff of dreams, right? Every small club, dreams of having some money pumped in, and you've got to be feeling excited about this. What about a documentary about the club? What about getting out there with it down the road at Salford? You had Neville, Scholesy, small club there, getting the limelight. Is that what you want?
Yeah, so the thing is, we know where we are and we understand where we are, and we are a real community club. Tonight, I'm ready now. I'm off to Marine, so off over to Merseyside. Playing the likes of Liverpool and Everton over on Merseyside would be kind of a dream come true. But we know where we are. We would just love to get to the Football League. So teams like Salford, Stockport County were in our division a couple of years ago, all flying now in the Football League. We just want to do the same. We sat down with the board last year and they told us the vision for the future, and that vision most definitely is that we want to be a Football League club. When we went to the Premier League, I know the boys have been saying that they 30 years will be in the Premier League and winning it. Well, let's hope we are, and let's hope I'm still around to see that.
Well, I wish you the very, very best of luck. I really do. That's Mark Oldham, the chair of the Chorley FC Supporters Trust, not the chair of the club. I gave a promotion there. But let's hope that the boys can take you up to the top flight of football. Thank you very much. Now, loads of you have been getting in touch, particularly on the issue of, is it the right thing to do to ban fireworks because they terrify animals? Sean says this: just had to get my meds off my vet for my dog. She is absolutely petrified of fireworks going off. Annie adds the same. My cat is petrified. Fireworks should be banned, except from November the 5th and New Year's Eve. I'm sick and tired of idiots setting them off weeks before Guy Fawkes. Judy quickly says fireworks should be for licensed events only. Right, that's it from me. I'll be back now. If you're a GB News member, you can speak to me at a Meet the Presenters event midday tomorrow. Get on the website, log in, come and ask me a question, come and say hello. But I'll be back at 3 o'clock tomorrow. Will we sleep? I certainly will be tuning in to the poll of the day. Here it is. Today we're asking, will we bring you the live results throughout the day? The poll was, who would you vote for at the election if you could vote in America? Astonishing poll. Trump, 91%. Harris, 7%. Not sure, 2%. That's it. You cannot stop the Trump train. Trump train. See you tomorrow, 3 till 6. Cheers.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Afternoon, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. We'll keep a lot of cloud overnight, and tomorrow another fairly grey day, but although there'll be a lot of cloud around, most places will be dry and quite mild. Going to turn quite chilly this evening across northern Scotland. We've got some clearer skies here. Some breaks in the cloud elsewhere could allow some fog to form, and it's not completely dry. We'll see some drizzly rain at times this evening across Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, and a bit more rain just coming into the far northwest as the winds pick up a little this evening here too. But for most it'll be dry, quite cloudy, and that will keep the temperatures up. A very mild night in the west. In the east with some clearer skies we could dip down to single figures, and we could, as I say, see some fog patches which may linger through Wednesday morning's rush hour across parts of northern Scotland. Will keep the clearer skies. So temperatures here through some sheltered glens may not be too far off freezing, but we should also see some brighter spells coming through. Western Scotland starting pretty drab but very mild. Same goes for Northern Ireland. Lots of cloud here, and say lots of cloud just generally everywhere. Thick cloud across the hills and mountains through England and Wales, and some fog patches across the southeast in particular, which may take most of the day to actually clear. So it's another pretty grey day. Some drizzly rain over southwest Scotland. The rain across northwest Scotland, that should clear. Maybe a few more